Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1, Allie Mercer, 29 years old, office administrator. Lived alone in apartment 7B at the Ridgewood Complex in Lansing, Michigan. No enemies, no concerning relationships, no history of mental illness. Just a woman who heard something strange one night and decided to investigate. The case file on Allison Allie Mercer began simply enough. Detective Ray Harmon had seen hundreds like it over his 23 years with the Lansing Police Department. Missing persons reports were common, most resolved within 48 hours when someone returned from an unannounced trip or emerged from a bender. But something about Allie's case lingered in his mind, like a shadow that grows longer as the sun descends. Born in 1995 to middle-class parents in Grand Rapids, Allie had been unremarkable in the most remarkable ways. An average student who excelled at connecting with people, the kind of person described as the glue of any social group. After college at Michigan State, she'd settled into a comfortable routine. Work at a local insurance company, weekend brunches with friends, calls to her parents every Sunday evening, and a growing collection of houseplants that transformed her one-bedroom apartment into what her mother called an urban jungle. Friends described Allie as cautious but not paranoid, the kind of woman who checked her locks twice but still walked home alone after dark if necessary. She had no serious boyfriend, though she dated occasionally. Her last relationship had ended amicably 6 months before her disappearance. The first unusual note in Allie's life appeared in early October. Text messages to her best friend, Kayla Winters, mentioned noises in her apartment at night. "I keep hearing things," she wrote on October 3rd. "Not like normal building sounds, more like movement when I'm in the shower or when I'm sleeping. I'll wake up thinking someone's in the living room." Kayla suggested it was probably just neighbors or pipes. Old buildings made strange sounds. The Ridgewood had been built in the 1970s after all. "Maybe," Allie had replied, "but it feels different." On October 7th, Allie purchased a baby monitor, the kind with both audio and video capabilities. She placed the camera unit in her living room and kept the receiver by her bed. Kayla later told police she'd laughed about it when Allie mentioned it over coffee. "I told her she was being silly," Kayla's voice cracked during her interview. "I told her to get a cat instead if she was feeling lonely." For 5 nights, the monitor recorded nothing unusual, just the natural settling of an aging building, the distant hum of traffic, and occasionally Allie herself moving between rooms. On the 6th night, October 13th, something changed. The audio file recovered from Allie's phone captured it. At 2:17 a.m., a whisper emerges from the static. "Allie," so faint that investigators initially marked it as interference. But at 2:19 a.m. it came again. "Allie," and again at 2:22 a.m. "Allie." The voice didn't come from the living room where the camera was positioned. Audio analysis would later confirm what Allie herself must have realized that night. The sound was coming from above, from inside the ceiling of her apartment. What Allie did next was documented in a series of frantic texts to Kayla at 2:34 a.m. "Someone's in my ceiling, I can hear them. The monitor picked it up. They're saying my name." Kayla didn't see the messages until morning. By then, Allie had sent more. I got the stepladder from the hallway closet. I'm going to look. There's a loose tile in the bathroom ceiling. I can push it up. The final message sent at 3:07 a.m. There's something up here. A pillow and glasses. Someone's been up here. I'm calling 911. But Allie never called 911. When Kayla couldn't reach her friend the next morning, she drove to the Ridgewood herself. Allie's apartment door was unlocked. Inside, a stepladder stood in the bathroom. A ceiling tile lay on the floor. Police arrived 20 minutes after Kayla's panicked call. They found the pillow and a pair of men's reading glasses in the narrow crawl space above Allie's bathroom. They also found something Allie hadn't mentioned in her texts, a small notebook filled with observations, dates and times when Allie left for work, when she showered, when she had visitors, when she slept. The ceiling crawl space connected all apartments on the 7th floor. Above Allie's unit, the insulation had been cleared away, creating a small nook just big enough for a person to lie flat. The glasses were prescription, -3.75 in both eyes. The pillow was standard, available at any department store, but had several long, dark hairs stuck to the pillowcase, hairs that didn't match Allie's lighter brown. Building management records showed no maintenance work authorized for the ceiling spaces in over 6 months. No residents reported seeing anyone suspicious entering or leaving the building. The security camera in the lobby had been broken since August. Detective Harmon ordered an immediate search of all connected ceiling spaces and a canvass of neighboring apartments. In apartment 7D, directly across the hall from Allie's, resident Thomas Woodley seemed oddly unsurprised by the police presence. "Is this about the girl?" he asked before officers explained why they were there. "The one who's been making all that noise." Woodley, 52, was a part-time community college instructor who had lived in the building for 11 years. He wore thick glasses and kept to himself. Neighbors described him as quiet and kind of odd but harmless. He claimed he barely knew Allie beyond occasional hallway greetings. When asked to provide a DNA sample, Woodley refused. When asked about his whereabouts the previous night, he claimed to have been grading papers at home. No one could verify his alibi. A search warrant for Woodley's apartment revealed nothing immediately suspicious. His glasses weren't a match for those found in the ceiling. His prescription was stronger, -4.5. However, a receipt from LensCrafters showed he had purchased 2 pairs during their last 2-for-1 sale. 3 days into the investigation, with Allie still missing, the case took another turn. The building manager, checking vacant apartment 7F2 doors down from Allie's, discovered a bathroom ceiling tile ajar. Inside that crawl space, a sleeping bag, bottled water, energy bar wrappers, and a digital camera. The camera contained 47 photos, all of Allie. Allie sleeping, Allie getting dressed, Allie watching television, Allie on her phone, all taken from above through small holes drilled in her ceiling tiles. Yet despite this evidence, Thomas Woodley maintained his innocence. His fingerprints weren't on the camera, the sleeping bag, or the notebook. The dark hairs on the pillow didn't match his gray-streaked brown hair. On October 23rd, 10 days after Allie's disappearance, maintenance worker Diego Suarez reported a strange odor coming from the building's basement storage area. Police found Allie Mercer's body inside a rarely used utility closet. She had been strangled. The medical examiner placed time of death between 3:00 and 5:00 a.m. on October 14th, within hours of her last text message. Under her fingernails, forensics found skin cells that didn't belong to Thomas Woodley. They belonged to another resident, Jason Brandt from apartment 5C, 2 floors below Allie. Brandt, 34, worked nights as a security guard at a downtown parking garage. He had no criminal record, no connection to Allie that anyone knew of. When questioned, he claimed never to have spoken to her beyond holding the door open occasionally. But Brandt's prescription matched the glasses found in the ceiling. His DNA matched the hairs on the pillow. And when police searched his apartment, they found a crawl space access panel in his bedroom closet ceiling, a passage that shouldn't have existed on architectural plans. I just wanted to watch her, Brandt confessed during his third interview. I never meant to hurt her, but when she found my things, when she saw what I'd been doing. Brandt had created an elaborate network of passages through the building's ceiling spaces over the 2 years he'd lived there. He'd mapped maintenance access points and created new ones. On nights when he wasn't working, he would spend hours lying silently above various apartments, watching and listening to the residents below, particularly the women who lived alone. Allie had been his favorite. He knew her schedule by heart, knew when she would be in the shower, when she would be sleeping. Sometimes, he admitted, he would whisper her name just to see if she would hear. I liked knowing she sensed me somehow, he told Detective Harmon. It made it feel like we had a connection. When Allie discovered his surveillance spot that night, Brandt had been watching from another access point. He entered her apartment through the bathroom ceiling while she was texting Kayla. The struggle was brief. He took her body to the basement through service corridors only maintenance staff were supposed to know existed. Thomas Woodley was cleared of all suspicion. Though his odd behavior had drawn police attention, he truly was just a socially awkward professor with no connection to the crime. At Brandt's sentencing in April after he pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, Allie's mother addressed the court. My daughter felt something wrong in her home. She knew someone was watching her. When she trusted that feeling, when she investigated, it cost her her life. But her instincts were right all along. The Ridgewood apartments stand much emptier now. Many residents moved out after learning the truth about the spaces above their ceilings. The building owners installed new security systems and sealed all unauthorized access points to the crawl spaces. Detective Harmon still keeps a photo of Allie on his desk, not her official missing person photo, but one from her Instagram showing her smiling among her beloved houseplants. Sometimes he wonders what might have happened if she had called 911 instead of investigating on her own, if she had run from her apartment instead of climbing that ladder. In the years since, 3 other buildings in the Lansing area have discovered similar unauthorized modifications to their ceiling spaces. In each case, the access points were created near apartments occupied by women living alone. Each night before he leaves the precinct, Detective Harmon glances at Allie's photo and reminds himself, sometimes the monsters hiding in the darkness aren't imaginary. Sometimes they're watching from just above our heads, whispering our names while we sleep, waiting for us to look up. Crime 2, she found the photo in the backyard, half buried in the dirt. A child standing in front of a shed, the same shed she had just had torn down the week before. In the picture, nailed to the door, was a sign, "Help her." Rebecca Thorne had moved into the modest 2-bedroom home on Oak Ridge Lane in Millfield, Connecticut, just 3 months earlier. At 32, she was starting over after her divorce, looking for a quiet place where she could rebuild her life. The house needed work, peeling paint, outdated fixtures, and an overgrown yard featuring an ancient wooden shed that leaned precariously to one side. The property had sat empty for nearly 2 years before Rebecca purchased it at a price that felt like a steal. The former owners, an elderly couple named the Prestons, had moved to Florida according to the realtor. The neighbors didn't talk much about them. When Rebecca asked, she received vague answers and changed subjects. Small towns had their quirks, she reasoned. The late April day when Rebecca found the Polaroid had begun like any other. She'd been planting a small garden where the shed had stood, turning over soil that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. The corner of the photograph peeked out from the dirt like a secret struggling to surface. Rebecca might have missed it entirely if not for the peculiar blue tint of its border. She brushed away the soil, revealing the image, a girl, perhaps 7 or 8 years old, with dark braided hair and a floral dress. The child wasn't smiling. Her face held an unsettling blank expression, eyes focused somewhere beyond the camera. Behind her stood the shed, identical to the one Rebecca had demolished, down to the rusted padlock and warped boards. And there, clearly visible on the door, was a handwritten sign reading, "Help her." The photograph trembled in Rebecca's hands. The shed was gone now, reduced to splintered wood in a dumpster that had been hauled away days ago. She turned the Polaroid over. On the back, written in faded blue ink, Lily, 1987. Rebecca didn't sleep that night. The child's expressionless face haunted her thoughts. Who was Lily? Why would someone take a photograph of a child in front of a sign pleading for help? And why was it buried in her yard? The next morning, Rebecca took the Polaroid to the local police station. Officer Dean Morris, a man in his 50s with silver-threaded hair and patient eyes, studied the photograph carefully. The Prestons lived in that house for nearly 40 years, he said, his voice measured and calm. Never had any children of their own. I don't recall them having any young relatives visit either. Do you know where I could contact them? Rebecca asked. Officer Morris's expression shifted subtly. Harold passed 3 years ago, heart attack. Margaret moved to her sister's place in Tampa afterward. That's when the house sat empty. Did they ever report a missing child? Or was there ever a missing child in Millfield around 1987? The officer's gaze lingered on the photograph. Not that I recall. I was just starting on the force back then. He paused. Let me make a copy of this and ask around. Could be nothing. Kids play strange games sometimes, but I'll look into it. Days passed without word from the police. Rebecca found herself standing in her backyard each evening, staring at the patch of earth where the shed had stood, where she'd found the photograph. Something felt wrong about the space, as if the ground itself held memories it couldn't express. She began asking neighbors about the Prestons, about the history of her house. Most conversations ended quickly. Finally, Mrs. Abernathy, an elderly woman who lived 3 doors down, invited Rebecca in for tea. People don't like to talk about it, Mrs. Abernathy said, her arthritis-curved fingers wrapped around a porcelain cup. There were rumors about Harold Preston, nothing proven, mind you, but people wondered. Wondered what? Rebecca pressed. Mrs. Abernathy's voice dropped. He worked at Millfield Elementary for years, janitor, good with the children, too good, some thought. There was talk of inappropriate behavior, but nothing ever came of it. Margaret defended him fiercely. And did they know a girl named Lily? The old woman's eyes narrowed. Where did you hear that name? Rebecca described finding the Polaroid. Mrs. Abernathy's hands began to tremble, tea sloshing dangerously close to the cup's rim. There was a girl who went missing, summer of '87, not from Millfield but Riversend, the next town over. I don't remember her name, but she was never found. The case went cold. That night, Rebecca couldn't stop thinking about the shed. Why had the Prestons kept it standing all those years? What had been inside? The demolition crew had commented on the unusual reinforcement of the structure, far more substantial than necessary for storing garden tools. She called Officer Morris the next morning. He sounded different, his previously calm demeanor replaced with a tense professionalism. "I was going to call you today," he said. "I checked our archives. There was a case in 1987. Lily Summers, 8 years old, disappeared walking home from a friend's house in Riversend. The investigation crossed into Millfield because Harold Preston was briefly questioned. He had been seen talking to Lily at school events. He did maintenance work for both districts." "Was he ever charged?" Rebecca asked, her throat dry. No evidence. The case remains unsolved." Rebecca's mind raced. "The shed on my property, do you think?" "I've already spoken with the chief," Morris interrupted. "We're sending a forensic team to examine the area where the shed stood. Can you be home this afternoon?" The police arrived at 2 o'clock. 3 officers and a technician with ground-penetrating radar. Rebecca watched from her kitchen window as they methodically scanned the area where the shed had stood. After an hour, the technician called the officers over. Their body language changed immediately. One made a phone call. Within 30 minutes, more police arrived, along with people in white coveralls. They began to dig. Rebecca sat on her porch steps as the afternoon stretched into evening. Neighbors gathered at the edges of her property, whispering behind cupped hands. As twilight descended, Officer Morris approached her, his face grim. "We found human remains," he said quietly. "Small, a child." The excavation continued for days. Forensic anthropologists confirmed the remains belonged to a child approximately 8 years old. Degraded fabric matching the description of the dress Lily Summers had been wearing when she disappeared was recovered with the bones. The investigation revealed more horrors. Further examination of the site uncovered 2 additional sets of remains, both children, one dated to 1982. Another to 1991. Neither had been reported missing from Millfield. A search of the Prestons' financial records showed Margaret had made regular cash withdrawals before each disappearance. Harold's personal effects, stored in their Florida home, included a box of Polaroid photographs hidden in a false-bottomed drawer, children standing expressionless before the shed. Margaret Preston was arrested in Tampa. During questioning, she maintained her innocence, claiming ignorance of her husband's activities, but the evidence suggested otherwise. Neighbors recalled she was often the one who approached children, inviting them to see the special place Harold had built. The helper's sign in the photograph remained unexplained. Had Harold written it as some perverse game? Had Lily managed to create it herself? Or had Margaret, in a moment of conscience later buried under loyalty to her husband, tried to leave a clue? Rebecca never planted her garden. She sold the house 6 months later, unable to live with the whispers of the past that seemed to permeate every corner of the property. The new owners demolished the entire structure, building anew from the foundation up. The case of Lily Summers and the other children found on Oak Ridge Lane became known as the Polaroid murders. Margaret Preston died in prison 2 years later, taking whatever truths she knew to her grave. And somewhere in an evidence locker in the Millfield Police Department, a half-buried Polaroid remains, a girl with dark braided hair standing before a shed, a silent testimony to horrors hidden in plain sight in a quiet neighborhood where no one wanted to ask too many questions. Sometimes the most disturbing mysteries are those partially solved. leaving us to wonder about the psychological landscapes of those who appear most normal: the elderly couple down the street, the friendly school janitor, the defensive wife. The monsters hiding behind ordinary faces, and the evidence of their crimes waiting just beneath the surface, patient as the seasons, until someone finally starts to dig. Crime 3, Alina Mercer had always been particular about her living space. At 43, she'd crafted her modest two-bedroom home in Whispering Pines, Oregon, into a sanctuary of order and predictability. The second bathroom, adjacent to the spare bedroom she used as a home office, remained perpetually unused, its door always locked. A strange habit, perhaps, but one that gave Alina comfort. She'd explained to the occasional visitor that keeping it locked saved on heating and cleaning, but the truth was more complex. Alina simply preferred knowing that part of her home remained untouched, pristine, a controlled space in an uncontrollable world. February in Whispering Pines brought long shadows and persistent rain. Alina worked remotely as a medical transcriptionist, her days passing in a quiet rhythm of typing, tea breaks, and evening walks when weather permitted. Neighbors described her as pleasant but reserved, the kind of person who would wave from her porch but rarely initiated conversation. She had moved to town 5 years earlier following her divorce, seeking the kind of anonymity only small towns paradoxically provide. On Tuesday, February 18, 2023, Alina followed her usual morning routine. She woke at 6:15, prepared coffee, and settled at her kitchen table with her laptop. Around 9:30, she walked down the hallway toward her office and noticed something that stopped her mid-stride. The door to the second bathroom stood ajar, just slightly, perhaps 2 inches, but unmistakably open. Alina later told Detective Harriet Walsh that she stood frozen for several moments, convinced she must have absent-mindedly unlocked it while cleaning. She pushed the door open fully, and what she found defied rational explanation. The white porcelain sink contained water droplets still beaded on the surface. The floor tiles near the shower felt damp beneath her slippered feet. But most disturbing were the 2 hand towels hanging neatly on the rack, both visibly used, both still carrying a slight dampness. Alina's breath quickened as she opened the mirrored cabinet above the sink. There, placed precisely where she would have put her own, sat a toothbrush, pink and white, identical to the one she used in her primary bathroom. "I didn't scream," Alina later recounted in her statement. "I didn't run. I just stood there wondering if I was losing my mind." She called the local police non-emergency line at 10:17 a.m. Officer Daniel Keating arrived 23 minutes later, finding Alina seated calmly at her kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of tea gone cold. The initial report classified the incident as a potential break-in, though nothing appeared to be missing, and Officer Keating noted no signs of forced entry on any doors or windows. "The house has a particular smell," Alina insisted as Officer Keating examined the bathroom. "Like someone else's soap or cologne, something medicinal almost." The case might have ended there, filed away as an unsolved minor intrusion, had Alina not discovered something else 3 days later. While sorting through her mail, she found an envelope with no return address containing only a small card with 5 typed words: "You should lock both bathrooms." Detective Walsh took over the investigation, ordering fingerprint analysis of the bathroom fixtures and towels. What they found perplexed the small department. The fingerprints belonged exclusively to Alina, yet certain patterns suggested the surfaces had been wiped clean before new prints, Alina's own, were applied. "It's like someone wanted to use your bathroom without leaving evidence, then deliberately had you touch everything afterward," Detective Walsh explained during their third interview. Meanwhile, Alina began experiencing small disturbances throughout her home, items slightly repositioned, her computer showing search histories for locations she'd never researched, the thermostat adjusted 2 degrees cooler than her preference. Each incident so minor it could be dismissed as forgetfulness, yet the accumulation created a persistent unease. The investigation expanded when Detective Walsh discovered that 3 other women in Whispering Pines had reported similar experiences within the past 18 months. All lived alone. All had spare rooms or spaces they rarely entered. All described finding evidence of someone having been in their homes, wet towels, moved objects, strange smells, with no signs of forced entry. Marissa Dawson at 156 Cedar Lane reported finding her guest bathroom used 6 months before Alina's incident. Sophia Wheeler found damp towels twice. Catherine Mortensen discovered her shower used and a different brand of shampoo in her guest bathroom. None had reported anything stolen. None had security systems. The connection became clearer when Detective Walsh mapped the 4 homes, each positioned within a quarter-mile of Whispering Pines Memorial Hospital. All 4 women had some connection to the medical profession. Alina transcribed medical reports, Marissa worked in hospital billing, Sophia was a retired nurse, and Catherine volunteered at the hospital gift shop. Deeper investigation revealed that all 4 women had another commonality. They had all, at different times, interacted with Dr. James Harlow, a respected radiologist who had joined the hospital staff 2 years earlier. Alina had transcribed his reports. Marissa processed his department's billing. Sophia had trained with him briefly before retirement. Catherine had assisted him with charity fundraising. Dr. Harlow lived in a renovated Victorian 3 blocks from the hospital with his wife of 15 years. His colleagues described him as brilliant but quiet. His patients found him efficient but distant. His record was impeccable. When Detective Walsh interviewed him on March 3rd, Dr. Harlow expressed appropriate concern about the incidents but offered no helpful information. His alibi for February 18th was solid. He had been performing procedures at the hospital during the estimated time someone had used Alina's bathroom. His fingerprints matched none found in any of the homes. The investigation seemed to stall until Alina called Detective Walsh on March 10th, her voice trembling despite her efforts to remain composed. "I found something," she said, "in the wall." During a bout of insomnia, Alina had noticed a slight discoloration on the wall shared between her office and the second bathroom. Pressing against it revealed a section that felt different from the surrounding drywall. Using a kitchen knife, she had carefully cut a small hole, revealing a narrow space behind the wall, a space containing a small notebook. The notebook contained detailed observations about all 4 women, their schedules, their habits, their routines. Most disturbing were the entries about watching them sleep. The handwriting matched none of the hospital staff, including Dr. Harlow. Forensic analysis found no usable fingerprints or DNA. Detective Walsh organized surveillance of all 4 homes. On March 17th at 2:14 a.m., an officer observed a figure entering Alina's backyard using a key to access her rear door. The figure was identified as Teresa Harlow, Dr. Harlow's wife. When taken into custody, Teresa Harlow displayed no resistance. In her possession were keys to all 4 homes, a notebook matching the one found in Alina's wall, and several toothbrushes. The subsequent investigation revealed that Teresa had worked as a cleaning service contractor for the hospital 2 years earlier, with temporary access to employee records. She had methodically collected spare keys, made copies, and created hidden observation points in each home. Her husband appeared genuinely shocked and horrified upon learning of her actions. During questioning, Teresa spoke calmly about her visits to the women's homes. "I just wanted to know how it felt to be them," she explained to Detective Walsh. "To use their things, to exist in their spaces. I never took anything important. I just borrowed their lives for a little while." Psychiatric evaluation diagnosed Teresa with a complex dissociative disorder, fueled by obsessive thoughts about identity and belonging. She had been methodically trying on the lives of women connected to her husband's work environment, using their homes when she knew they would be absent, but gradually becoming bolder, using spaces they actively lived in but rarely entered. Elena Mercer sold her house 6 weeks after Teresa Harlow's arrest, unable to feel secure in the space despite new locks and a security system. The other women similarly relocated or made significant changes to their homes. Dr. Harlow resigned from the hospital and moved to another state. The case of the locked bathroom with wet towels was technically solved, but the psychological implications lingered in whispering pines like the persistent Oregon rain, seeping into foundations, eroding certainties, leaving everything slightly altered in ways difficult to articulate. Elena, now living in an apartment building with a doorman in Portland, still checks her bathroom every morning and evening. She keeps no spare rooms, no unused spaces. Every corner of her new home is regularly occupied, regularly used. And she never locks any interior doors. She prefers now to see everything at once, to know with absolute certainty when something has been disturbed. Sometimes, though, she still wakes in the night, thinking she hears water running through pipes that should be silent, convinced that somewhere, someone is still trying on her life, one damp towel at a time. Crime 4. On the morning of October 12, 2021, Elaine Winters opened her laptop in her modest one-bedroom apartment in Greenwood, Indiana. The soft autumn light filtered through gauzy curtains as she prepared for another day of remote work. A creature of routine, the 32-year-old graphic designer always began her mornings the same way. Coffee brewing in the kitchen, toast with almond butter, and 15 minutes to check her personal email before logging into her company portal. But that Tuesday morning disrupted everything Elaine had carefully constructed in her quiet life. She clicked on her email inbox and paused. Among the usual promotional newsletters and Amazon receipts sat a draft email, one she didn't remember creating. The subject line read simply, "We should talk." When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. The message was addressed to Marcus Delaney, a name she hadn't spoken aloud in nearly 4 years. The body of the email contained several paragraphs written in what appeared to be her typical writing style, referencing personal details only she would know. It ended with a line that made her hands tremble. "Let's make it right this time. No mistakes." Elaine hadn't written it, she was certain. She immediately called her closest friend, Tara Bennett, who arrived 30 minutes later to find Elaine pacing her living room, checking the locks on her windows for the 3rd time. "Someone's been in my apartment, Tara. Someone's been using my computer." Tara suggested a more logical explanation. Perhaps Elaine had started the draft late at night and forgotten. Maybe she'd been taking her sleep medication again, but Elaine insisted that wasn't possible. She showed Tara the email draft, pointing out specific references to conversations she and Marcus had years ago, intimate details she'd never shared with anyone, not even Tara. Marcus Delaney had been Elaine's college boyfriend at Indiana University. Their relationship had ended suddenly in 2017 following what Elaine would only describe to friends as a situation that got out of hand. She hadn't spoken to him since graduation. According to her family, the breakup had triggered Elaine's first major depressive episode, leading to a brief hospitalization and her eventual move to Greenwood, a fresh start away from Bloomington and its memories. On Wednesday, Elaine called a locksmith to change her locks. She also contacted the building manager, requesting access to security footage from the hallway outside her apartment. The manager, Dave Simmons, told her the cameras had been down for maintenance the previous weekend. When Elaine pressed for more information about who might have had access to her apartment, Simmons grew defensive, reminding her that the lease agreement clearly stated maintenance personnel could enter units with 24-hour notice. Had she received any notices, she couldn't remember. By Friday of that week, 2 more draft emails had appeared, each addressed to Marcus, each written in Elaine's distinctive voice, each containing details of their past relationship and suggestions about meeting in person. The final one included an address for a coffee shop in Indianapolis and a date, October 21st. Elaine finally contacted the Greenwood Police Department on Saturday. Officer Leanne McCarthy took her statement but seemed skeptical. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing had been stolen. The officer gently suggested that perhaps Elaine had written the emails herself during a dissociative episode and offered the contact information for a mental health crisis center. "This isn't in my head," Elaine insisted. "Someone is trying to make me think I'm losing my mind." The following day, Elaine received a text from an unknown number. "Looking forward to seeing you on the 21st. I've missed your face." She blocked the number immediately. On Monday morning, Elaine didn't log in for work. She didn't answer calls from her supervisor or from Tara. When Tara used her emergency key to enter the apartment that evening, she found it empty. Elaine's phone lay on the kitchen counter. Her laptop was gone, but nothing else appeared to be missing. On the refrigerator, held by a magnet shaped like the state of Indiana, was a note in what looked like Elaine's handwriting: "Meeting Marcus, finally fixing things." Tara called the police again. This time, they took the situation more seriously. Detective Samuel Harlow was assigned to the case. His investigation revealed several troubling details. First, Marcus Delaney had moved to Seattle immediately after graduation, and according to his social media profiles and workplace, hadn't returned to Indiana in years. When contacted by police, he seemed genuinely confused about the situation, claiming he hadn't spoken to Elaine since their breakup. He forwarded their last text exchange from 2017, a brief, cold conversation ending their relationship with no explanation of the situation that had caused it. Second, Elaine's laptop was found 3 days later in a dumpster behind her apartment building. The hard drive had been completely wiped. The draft emails were gone. Third, surveillance footage from an ATM 2 blocks from Elaine's apartment showed her walking alone at 6:42 a.m. on Monday morning, carrying what appeared to be an overnight bag. She didn't appear distressed. The direction she was walking would have taken her toward the bus station. As Detective Harlow dug deeper into Elaine's life, contradictions emerged. Her therapist, Dr. Lillian Chen, disclosed that Elaine had been discussing Marcus extensively in their recent sessions, expressing regret about how things had ended. Dr. Chen noted that Elaine had stopped taking her prescribed medication about 3 months earlier, believing she no longer needed it. Tara insisted this couldn't be true. Elaine never mentioned Marcus anymore and seemed to be thriving. Their mutual friends agreed. Elaine had seemed stable, happy even in recent months. The investigation took an unexpected turn when Detective Harlow interviewed Elaine's building manager again. Dave Simmons eventually admitted that the security cameras hadn't been down for maintenance. They'd been disabled deliberately after a series of tenant complaints about privacy. He also reluctantly revealed that a former maintenance worker named Keith Lawson had been fired 2 weeks earlier for making copies of tenant keys. Lawson had worked in the building for less than a month and had disappeared after his termination. When police ran a background check on Keith Lawson, they discovered the name was an alias. His fingerprints matched those of Kevin Leary, a man with a history of stalking charges in 3 states. More disturbing was the connection they found. Kevin had been a teaching assistant in one of Elaine's design classes at Indiana University, the same semester she had dated Marcus. Police issued an APB for Kevin Leary, but he seemed to have vanished. Meanwhile, Elaine's bank records showed no activity after her disappearance. Her cell phone data ended abruptly the morning she left. The coffee shop address mentioned in the draft email turned out to be an abandoned storefront in a nearly empty strip mall. 2 weeks after Elaine's disappearance, Tara received a postcard in the mail. The image showed Pike Place Market in Seattle. The message, written in what appeared to be Elaine's handwriting, read, "Sometimes the only way to fix the past is to create a new future. I'm okay, don't look for me." The postmark was from Indianapolis, not Seattle. 6 months passed with no sign of Elaine Winters. Detective Harlow continued to investigate when time allowed, but leads grew cold. The case remained open but inactive until a cleaning crew renovating the abandoned coffee shop location discovered a laptop bag hidden in the building's ventilation system. Inside was a journal, apparently belonging to Elaine. The journal painted a disturbing picture. In entries dating back 2 years, Elaine described feeling watched, noticing small objects in her apartment being moved, hearing breathing sounds on her phone calls. She'd attributed these experiences to her anxiety disorder and hadn't reported them. More recent entries detailed her growing suspicion that Kevin Leary, whom she remembered from college, had found her. The final entry, dated October 19th, read, "I know it's him. I can feel it. If something happens to me, it wasn't Marcus. It was never about Marcus. It was always Kevin." Police renewed their search for Kevin Leary, expanding it nationwide. His last known address in Chicago led nowhere. His family claimed they hadn't heard from him in years. To this day, Elaine Winters remains missing. Periodically, Tara receives postcards from different cities, Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, all with the same message, creating a new future, all postmarked from Indianapolis. Detective Harlow keeps the case file on his desk. Sometimes, late at night, he reads through Elaine's journal again, wondering if the woman is running from a threat only she can see, or if she's running from herself. And sometimes he wonders if somewhere Kevin Leary is watching, waiting, planning to insert himself into someone else's life, one carefully crafted email at a time. The truth remains as elusive as Elaine herself. Crime 5, renovation started smoothly until she tore out the drywall in the hallway and heard it. A single cough, muffled and low. She froze. Inside the wall was an old vent, blocked with insulation, and a patch of long, dark hair caught between the studs. Meredith Campbell had always dreamed of a home to call her own. At 34, she'd finally saved enough for a down payment on a modest 2-bedroom Craftsman in the quiet suburb of Millfield, Oregon. Built in 1967, the house needed work, outdated fixtures, worn carpets, and walls painted in what realtors generously called vintage colors. But Meredith saw potential. She saw her future. The house on Larkspur Lane had stood vacant for nearly 8 months before Meredith purchased it. The previous owner, an elderly woman named Virginia Rains, had passed away in a nursing home after living alone for over 3 decades. Neighbors described Virginia as reserved but pleasant, a widow who kept to herself but always waved from her porch. The real estate agent mentioned that Virginia's children had cleaned out the house but had little interest in the property. They lived out of state and seemed eager to sell. Meredith, who worked as a graphic designer for a local marketing firm, spent weekends and evenings renovating. She started with the kitchen, then moved to the small bathroom, and finally began work on the hallway that connected the living room to the bedrooms. It was her 3rd month in the house when she decided to remove the dated wood paneling and replace it with fresh drywall. It smelled different in that hallway, Meredith would later tell Detective James Hawkins. Not bad exactly, just off, like old paper and something metallic. On Saturday, April 14, 2018, Meredith began pulling down the paneling. The work was tedious but straightforward. She removed the baseboards first, then pried away the panels one by one, revealing the original plaster walls underneath. By mid-afternoon, she had reached the section nearest to the spare bedroom. That's when she found it, a portion of wall that had been repaired at some point, patched with newer drywall instead of the original plaster. The patch job was about 3 feet wide and 4 feet high, stretching from knee level to just above waist height. I thought it was weird, Meredith recalled. The work was sloppy, nothing like the craftsmanship in the rest of the house. It looked rushed. Curious, she decided to remove the patch. She scored around the edges with a utility knife and began pulling away the drywall in chunks. Behind it was a small rectangular opening, likely an old heating vent that had been covered over during a previous renovation. The opening led to the cavity between the walls. As Meredith leaned closer to inspect it, she heard the cough. It was faint, so faint she initially thought she had imagined it. A short, dry sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep within the wall cavity. Meredith froze, her heart suddenly pounding. She waited for nearly a minute before convincing herself it had been the house settling or perhaps a pipe contracting. She leaned in again and shined her phone's flashlight into the darkness. The beam illuminated dust particles floating in the air, the wooden studs and bits of old insulation. And then she saw it, caught between a stud and what appeared to be an old heating duct, a clump of dark hair. Meredith called the police immediately. Detective James Hawkins had been with the Millfield Police Department for 17 years. He had investigated his share of unusual cases, but the call from Larkspur Lane struck him as particularly odd. Most of these old house calls turn out to be nothing, he explained. Animal remains, old toys, sometimes letters or photographs, but hair, that was different. Hawkins arrived with a crime scene technician named Dana Ramirez. Together they examined the wall cavity, carefully documenting and collecting the hair sample. They also discovered something else, something Meredith had missed. At the bottom of the wall cavity, partially hidden by insulation, lay a single earring, a small gold hoop with a tiny pearl. That's when we knew we might have something more than just an unusual renovation find, Hawkins said. The police expanded their search, removing more sections of wall. They found no other evidence, but brought in specialized equipment to examine the wall cavities throughout the house. They also began researching the property's history. Virginia Raines had purchased the house in 1985 after her husband died. Prior to that, the house had belonged to a couple named Robert and Elaine Markson. The Marksons had lived there from 1972 to 1985. Before them, the original owners were Thomas and Diane Fletcher, who had the house built in 1967. As police dug deeper into the history, they uncovered something significant. In 1983, Robert and Elaine Markson had reported their 19-year-old daughter, Cassandra, missing. Cassandra Markson was a sophomore at Westlake Community College, studying nursing. According to the original police reports, she had last been seen leaving campus on November 12, 1983. Her car was found in the college parking lot the next day, but Cassandra never returned home. The case had gone cold after months of investigation yielded no leads. We had to consider the possibility, Detective Hawkins later stated, that we might be looking at a 35-year-old homicide. The hair sample and earring were sent to the state crime lab for analysis. DNA testing confirmed the hair belonged to a female, but the decades of exposure to heat, moisture, and insulation chemicals had degraded the sample too much for a conclusive identification. The earring, however, proved more valuable. Investigators showed a photograph of it to Cassandra's brother, Michael Markson, now 61 and living in Seattle. "That's hers," he said without hesitation. "Our grandmother gave Cassie those earrings for her 18th birthday. She wore them all the time." With this new information, police obtained a warrant to conduct a more invasive search of Meredith's home. They brought in cadaver dogs and ground-penetrating radar to examine the foundations and surrounding property. Nothing was found. The investigation took an unexpected turn when detectives interviewed former neighbors of the Marksons. An elderly man named Frank Delaney, who had lived across the street since 1970, recalled something unusual about the fall of 1983. "Robert started that renovation right after Thanksgiving," Delaney told investigators. "Worked on it himself, said he was fixing some plumbing issues, but it was odd timing. It was freezing cold and he was tearing out walls, seemed in a real hurry to get it done." Police records showed that Robert Markson had died in 1997 of a heart attack. Elaine had passed away in 2002. Neither had ever been considered suspects in their daughter's disappearance. Further investigation revealed that Robert Markson had been laid off from his job at a local manufacturing plant just weeks before Cassandra disappeared. Financial records showed the family had been struggling with multiple late mortgage payments. "Arguments," said another former neighbor, Patricia Wilkins. "You could hear them shouting sometimes. Robert had a temper, especially after he lost his job, and Cassandra, she was talking about dropping out of college to work full-time. Her father was dead set against it." As the investigation continued, police revisited the original missing person case. They discovered something that had been overlooked. Cassandra's boyfriend at the time, Trevor Hennings, had told police that Cassandra had called him the night she disappeared, sounding upset. She had mentioned a fight with her father but didn't elaborate. Trevor, now living in Portland, confirmed this account when re-interviewed. "She said she was going home to pack some things," he recalled. "She was planning to stay with a friend for a while. I offered to come get her, but she said no. That was the last time I talked to her." The investigation stalled again. Without a body, police couldn't prove a crime had been committed, let alone identify a suspect. The hair and earrings suggested Cassandra may have been in the wall cavity, but they weren't conclusive evidence of foul play. Then, 6 months after Meredith's discovery, a new resident moved into the house next door. During a conversation about the ongoing investigation, the neighbor mentioned finding an old box of photographs in their attic. The previous owners left all kinds of junk up there, they told Meredith. I found this box of old Polaroids, looks like they're from the 80s, neighborhood stuff mostly. Among those photographs was one that caught Meredith's attention. It showed her house in the background, dated December 1983. In the image, Robert Markson could be seen loading what appeared to be carpet into the trunk of his car. The date stamp indicated it was taken just 2 weeks after Cassandra was reported missing. Detective Hawkins obtained the photograph, which was submitted as evidence. The investigation expanded to include the local landfill that had operated in the early 1980s, as well as several wooded areas where Robert Markson was known to go fishing. To this day, Cassandra Markson's body has never been found. The case remains officially open, but inactive. The hair and earring remain the only physical evidence that she may have returned home that November night in 1983. Meredith Campbell eventually finished her renovations and still lives in the house on Larkspur Lane. She replaced all the walls, had the heating system modernized, and even added a small garden in the backyard. She says she feels no unease in the house, quite the opposite. I feel like I helped uncover something that needed to be brought to light, she explains. Whatever happened to Cassandra, at least now people are asking the right questions. She deserves that much. And sometimes on quiet winter nights when the heating system kicks on, Meredith swears she can hear something, not quite a cough, but a soft rushing sound, like someone trying to speak through the vents. She doesn't find it frightening anymore, just sad. A reminder that within the walls we build, secrets can linger for decades, waiting for someone to finally listen. Crime 6, she requested her records for a passport renewal. Along with them came a second birth certificate, same hospital, same weight, same name. The only difference was the file number, and the note attached, copy issued due to containment breach. Ellen Marsh had lived in Oak Ridge, Connecticut for all 32 years of her life. A quiet woman with auburn hair that fell just past her shoulders, she worked as a librarian at the local branch where patrons knew her as the one who could find any book, no matter how obscure. Her colleagues described her as meticulous, organized, and private. Ellen preferred the measured silence of library stacks to the unpredictable noise of social gatherings. Her apartment above the old hardware store on Main Street contained precisely arranged bookshelves, each volume categorized by her own modified Dewey Decimal System. It was March 2017 when Ellen decided to plan her first trip abroad, a literary tour of England. She had saved for years, tucking away small portions of her modest salary for what she called her Bront pilgrimage. The passport application process seemed straightforward enough. Ellen gathered the required documents, her driver's license, social security card, and a request form for her birth certificate from the Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital, where she was born on November 12, 1985. The manila envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Ellen remembered because it was her day for cataloging new acquisitions, and she always came home later on Tuesdays. The envelope sat on her kitchen counter until after dinner when she opened it while sipping chamomile tea. Inside was her birth certificate, just as expected. Weight 6 pounds 4 ounces. Parents Margaret and Thomas Marsh. Time of birth 3:47 a.m. But beneath it lay a second certificate. Initially, Ellen assumed it was a copy, then she noticed the small differences. The file number different, the medical attendant's signature slightly larger, and attached with a paperclip a small note on yellowed paper that read, "Copy issued due to containment breach." Ellen placed both certificates side by side on her kitchen table. She ran her fingers over the raised seal on each document, confirming they were both official. The chamomile tea grew cold beside her as she stared at the documents, the phrase "containment breach" echoing in her mind. The next morning, Ellen called the records office at Oak Ridge Memorial Hospital. The receptionist who answered seemed uninterested in Ellen's concerns, explaining that old records sometimes had unusual notes attached, likely administrative errors from decades past. When Ellen pressed further, the woman's tone shifted subtly. "Ms. Marsh, these records are over 30 years old. The staff who processed them are likely retired or deceased. I assure you there's nothing unusual about your birth. Is there anything else I can help you with today?" The dismissal felt practiced, almost rehearsed. Ellen thanked the woman and hung up, but the unease lingered. That afternoon at the library, during her lunch break, she searched through the local newspaper archives for November 1985. Nothing unusual appeared for the week of her birth, just the standard small-town news of planning committee meetings and high school football scores. Ellen's friend and coworker, Diane, noticed her distraction. "Everything okay with your passport stuff?" she asked, arranging returned books on a cart. Ellen hesitated before sharing her discovery. Diane listened, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "That is weird," she admitted. "Maybe it has something to do with your adoption." Ellen stared at her friend. "My what?" Diane's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh God, Ellen, I thought you knew. I just assumed. Your parents told you." The floor seemed to tilt beneath Ellen's feet. "What are you talking about?" Diane explained that years ago, her mother, who had worked as a nurse at Oak Ridge Memorial, had mentioned that the Marshes had adopted Ellen. It was common knowledge among the hospital staff, but rarely discussed out of respect for the family's privacy. That evening, Ellen sat in her childhood home's living room, facing her mother. Margaret Marsh, now 73, looked small in the oversized armchair that had been her husband's favorite before his death 3 years prior. "We always planned to tell you," Margaret said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Your father wanted to wait until you were older, then you were going through that difficult time in high school, and then it just never seemed like the right moment." Ellen struggled to keep her voice steady. "So I'm adopted." Margaret nodded slowly. "But you were always ours from the very first moment." "What about my birth parents?" Margaret's eyes dropped to her hands, twisted together in her lap. "We were told very little, only that your birth mother was young, unable to care for a child. The adoption was arranged through the hospital. It was unusual. Typically there would be an agency involved, but Dr. Brenner, he was the chief of obstetrics then, he handled everything." "And the containment breach, what does that mean?" Margaret looked genuinely confused. "Containment breach, I don't know anything about that." Ellen showed her mother the 2 certificates and the attached note. Margaret's hands trembled as she examined them. "I've never seen this note before. We only received 1 certificate." In the days that followed, Ellen's planned literary tour faded into the background as she became consumed with uncovering the truth about her birth. She contacted the state records office, visited the county clerk, and even reached out to retired hospital staff whose names she found in old newspaper clippings. Most led to dead ends. Then Ellen tracked down Nancy Weber, a former administrative assistant who had worked in records at Oak Ridge Memorial during the 1980s. The elderly woman agreed to meet Ellen at a coffee shop just outside town. Nancy's white hair was pulled back in a neat bun, her posture still remarkably straight despite her 86 years. She listened carefully as Ellen explained her situation and showed her the two certificates. "I remember November 1985 quite clearly," Nancy said, her voice low. "There was an incident at the hospital, not public knowledge, kept very quiet." Ellen leaned forward. "What kind of incident?" Nancy glanced around the nearly empty coffee shop before continuing. "A security breach in the maternity ward. Someone unauthorized gained access to the nursery. Nothing was reported stolen or damaged, but protocols were implemented immediately afterward. New security doors, ID checks, the works." "Did this happen around my birth date?" "The exact day, in fact." Nancy took a sip of her tea. "The strange thing was how it was handled. Usually with a security breach, police would be involved, but this was all internal. Dr. Brenner insisted on handling everything personally." "The same Dr. Brenner who arranged my adoption." Nancy nodded slowly. "He was an unusual man, brilliant physician, but secretive. Had his own research projects the board gave him unusual latitude with. After that night he became even more private, left the hospital entirely about 6 months later." Ellen felt a chill despite the coffee shop's warmth. "Is Dr. Brenner still alive?" "Died about 10 years ago, car accident on Route 7. As Ellen continued her investigation, other unusual details emerged. The night of her birth, hospital power had fluctuated, causing backup generators to activate. 3 nurses who had been on duty that night had requested transfers to different departments immediately afterward. And strangest of all, when Ellen finally gained access to the complete hospital records for that night through a persistent records request, she discovered that 4 babies had been recorded as born, but only 3 birth names were listed. The 4th birth entry simply read, "Female infant, 6 pounds, 4 Oz, 3:47 a.m., attending Brenner Stanley." Ellen's exact birth weight and time. Through persistent research, Ellen discovered that Dr. Brenner had maintained a private practice after leaving the hospital. His office had been cleared out years ago, but the building's current owner allowed Ellen to look around. In the basement storage room, forgotten in a water-damaged box, she found partial records, mostly administrative notes and supply orders. But among them was a personal notebook, its pages filled with Dr. Brenner's cramped handwriting. Most entries were mundane, but Ellen found references to a Subject E who required ongoing monitoring and something called the Mirror Protocol. One page contained a series of dates, regular intervals about 6 months apart, with notes beside them about developmental markers and cognitive tests. The last page Ellen could decipher contained a disturbing note. Subject E continues to develop normally with no indication of separation trauma. Original remains contained. Decision to maintain parallel development appears successful. Ellen took the notebook to Professor James Wilson, a retired medical researcher who had once worked with Dr. Brenner. He reviewed the fragmented notes with growing concern. "I knew Stanley was conducting some unorthodox research, but this," he shook his head. "These notes suggest some kind of longitudinal study involving twins, possibly separated at birth. The ethics of such a study would be highly questionable. "But I don't have a twin," Ellen said. Professor Wilson looked at her with something like pity. "Are you certain of that?" The possibility struck Ellen with sudden force. What if she did have a twin? What if the containment breach referred to information about this twin somehow leaking? What if the original mentioned in Brenner's notes was her identical sister? Ellen's search led her to a storage facility on the outskirts of Oak Ridge. Dr. Brenner's widow, now living in Arizona, confirmed that some of his work materials remained there, untouched since his death. With permission, Ellen sorted through boxes of medical journals and research papers. In a locked metal case, she found files labeled with single letters. The file marked E contained photos, baby pictures, school photos taken from a distance, casual snapshots of a young woman in a library, pictures of Ellen herself spanning decades of her life without her knowledge. And alongside them, similar photos of another young woman who looked exactly like her. The final page in the file contained an address in Millfield, a town less than 30 miles from Oak Ridge. Ellen drove there the next day, her heart pounding as she parked outside the modest home. The mailbox read Carlton. She waited, watching from her car, until a woman emerged onto the porch to water plants. Ellen's breath caught in her throat. It was like looking in a mirror. For several minutes, Ellen sat frozen, unsure whether to approach. Before she could decide, the woman looked up, her eyes meeting Ellen's across the distance. A flicker of recognition passed over her face, not surprise, but confirmation. Ellen stepped out of her car. The woman set down her watering can and walked to the edge of her yard. They stood facing each other, separated by 20 feet of walkway. "You're Ellen," the woman said, not a question. "Yes," Ellen replied, "and you are." "Emily," she smiled sadly, "I've been waiting for you to find me. Dr. Brenner said you eventually would. He called it the inevitable convergence." As the sun began to set over Millfield, the two women sat on Emily's porch, piecing together their fractured history. They were indeed identical twins, separated at birth as part of Brenner's unauthorized study on nature versus nurture. Emily had always known about Ellen. Brenner had raised her himself after his wife was unable to conceive, keeping her existence hidden from everyone except a small circle of research associates. The containment breach had occurred when a night nurse discovered Brenner attempting to take Emily out of the hospital without proper documentation. The matter was quickly suppressed. Brenner was influential in the community, but additional paperwork had to be created to account for both babies. He was obsessed with the idea that identical genetics raised in different environments would eventually seek each other out, Emily explained. "He monitored your life from a distance while raising me as his experiment." Ellen struggled to process the revelation. "Didn't you ever want to meet me before this?" Emily looked away. "I was raised to observe you, not to know you. Brenner said making contact would contaminate the study." She paused. "After he died, I didn't know how to reach out. How do you tell someone their entire life has been watched, that you've been the control group in an experiment they never consented to?" As night fell completely, the two women continued talking, navigating the strange new reality of their connection. The passport application that had started Ellen's journey lay forgotten. There would be no literary tour of England, at least not yet. Instead, Ellen had discovered a different kind of journey altogether, one that would require her to redefine everything she understood about her identity. The truth, as it turned out, was both simpler and more complex than a containment breach. It was the story of a doctor's unethical obsession, of twins separated by science rather than circumstance, and of lives that had run in parallel, like two birth certificates side by side, waiting for the moment when they would finally intersect. Some in Oak Ridge would later claim they had always suspected something unusual about Ellen Marsh. Others would insist they had occasionally seen two of her, dismissing these sightings as tricks of the light or simple confusion. The truth remained known only to the sisters themselves, who were left to navigate the complex emotional terrain of being both strangers and the closest possible relations. For Ellen, the discovery brought not just a sister, but a reframing of her entire existence. Each memory, each formative moment of her life now carried the shadow of surveillance. Meanwhile, Emily struggled to establish an identity separate from her role as observer and studied subject. The question that haunted them both, often unspoken during their meetings in the months that followed, was whether their growing bond was genuine or simply the inevitable convergence that Brenner had predicted, the final data point in his lifelong experiment. And somewhere in a filing cabinet or storage box yet undiscovered, the complete records of Dr. Stanley Brenner waited, containing either answers or merely more questions about the true nature and purpose of what he had done. The sisters would have to decide together whether finding those records would bring healing or simply reopen wounds barely beginning to heal. What remained certain was that two birth certificates existed, identical in almost every way except for their file numbers, a paper trail of a breach that had never been fully contained. Crime 7, the morning sunlight filtered through the blinds of Elaine Mercer's bedroom window, casting long shadows across her neatly made bed. Every morning at 6:30 a.m., the 37-year-old dental hygienist would wake up, make her coffee, and call her mother before heading to work at Brookside Dental in the small town of Pinehurst, Oregon. It was a ritual she hadn't broken in 7 years, not since her father had passed away suddenly from a heart attack. She was reliable to a fault, her mother, Donna Mercer, would later tell investigators, her voice barely audible. When she didn't call that Thursday morning, I knew something was wrong. Mothers just know these things. Elaine had grown up in Pinehurst, a town of just under 12,000 people nestled in the evergreen forests of western Oregon. After college in Portland, she had returned home, settling into the rhythm of small-town life with apparent contentment. Her colleagues described her as quiet but warm, meticulous in her work, and always ready with a gentle reassurance for nervous patients. She had this way about her, Dr. Marcus Chen, her employer of 9 years, recalled. Patients who were terrified of dental work would specifically request Elaine. She had a calming presence. That Thursday, April 17, 2023, when Elaine didn't show up for her first appointment at 8:00 a.m., the receptionist, Tara Winslow, called her cell phone. No answer. By 8:30, with Elaine still absent and unreachable, Tara called Donna Mercer. "Have you heard from Elaine today?" Tara asked, trying to keep the concern from her voice. The silence that followed told her everything. By 9:15 a.m., Donna had driven the 3 miles to her daughter's modest one-bedroom apartment on Willow Lane. She still had a key, Elaine had insisted, just in case. The apartment complex was quiet on a weekday morning, most residents already gone to work. Donna knocked anyway, 3 sharp raps that echoed in the empty hallway. Then she used her key. The apartment was still, too still. Elaine's coffee mug sat unused on the counter. Her bed was unmade, uncharacteristic for someone who valued order. Her phone lay on the nightstand, plugged into its charger, but there was no sign of Elaine. It was like she had vanished between getting ready for bed and waking up, Donna would say later, her hands trembling slightly as she spoke. Her pajamas were folded on the pillow. Her slippers were by the bed, but her day clothes, the ones she'd laid out the night before, those were gone. Officer Nathan Reeves of the Pinehurst Police Department took the missing persons report at 10:37 a.m. that same day. In his 12 years on the force, he had seen his share of disappearances. Most resolved themselves within 24 hours, misunderstandings, impromptu trips, lovers' quarrels. But something about Elaine's case made him uneasy from the start. There was no sign of forced entry, he noted in his initial report. No indication of a struggle, but there was a tension in that apartment that I can't quite explain, like the air itself was holding its breath. The investigation began quietly, almost routinely. Friends and colleagues were interviewed. Security footage from neighboring businesses was reviewed. Elaine's bank accounts and credit cards showed no activity since her last grocery run 3 days earlier. 5 days into the investigation, Detective Samantha Holder was assigned to the case. Unlike Officer Reeves, Holder had only recently moved to Pinehurst from Seattle, where she had worked homicide for 7 years. She approached the case with fresh eyes and urban skepticism. Small towns have secrets, she would later tell a journalist who covered the case for the Oregonian. And those secrets tend to be buried deeper than in cities, where anonymity makes confession easier. Holder's first significant discovery came from Elaine's laptop, which had been found closed on her kitchen table. The browser history revealed multiple searches in the weeks leading up to her disappearance. How to tell if someone is following you, what to do if you think you're being stalked, Oregon restraining order process. The search history painted a disturbing picture of a woman who believed she was being watched, yet Elaine had filed no police reports. She had mentioned no concerns to her mother, her friends, or her colleagues. She didn't want to worry me, Donna insisted, tears welling in her eyes. After Dad died, she became so protective of me. She wouldn't have told me if something was wrong. Detective Holder dug deeper. She interviewed neighbors in Elaine's apartment complex, showing them photographs, asking if they had noticed anyone unusual hanging around. Most shook their heads, offered sympathetic murmurs, and closed their doors. But one neighbor, 83-year-old Meredith Holloway in apartment 3C, directly across from Elaine's, had something to share. For about 2 weeks before that poor girl disappeared, Meredith said, adjusting her glasses nervously, I noticed a dark blue sedan parked on the street. Not always in the same spot, but always with a view of the front entrance. I thought maybe it was a new residence visitor, but they never got out, just sat there sometimes for hours. Meredith hadn't noted the license plate. Her eyesight wasn't what it used to be, but she was certain about the car's make. A Toyota Camry, probably 5 or 6 years old. Detective Holder immediately put out an alert for the vehicle. 3 days later, Patrol Officer Luis Menendez spotted a blue Toyota Camry parked a block away from Brookside Dental during his routine patrol. The car was registered to a Jeremy Walsh, 41, a name that initially meant nothing to the investigation. Walsh had no criminal record. He worked as an IT consultant for various businesses in Pinehurst and neighboring towns. He lived alone in a small house on the outskirts of town. There was nothing in his background to suggest a connection to Elaine Mercer. But when Detective Holder interviewed Tara Winslow again, specifically asking about Walsh, the receptionist's expression changed. Jeremy, he did some work on our computer systems maybe 8 months ago, she said, frowning slightly. He was here for about a week, quiet guy, kept to himself. But now that you mention it, he did seem to hover around Elaine's station more than necessary. What followed was a careful surveillance operation on Jeremy Walsh. Officers observed his movements, noted his routines. They discovered that he frequented the same grocery store as Elaine, the same coffee shop, the same walking path in Pinehurst Park. It wasn't coincidence, Detective Holder would later testify. These were deliberate intersections, carefully planned to appear random. A search warrant for Walsh's home revealed the true extent of his obsession. In a spare bedroom, officers found what could only be described as a shrine to Elaine Mercer. Photographs covered one wall, Elaine leaving work, shopping, meeting friends for dinner. Some had clearly been taken with a telephoto lens from a distance. Others were more disturbing, shots through her apartment window of private moments she never knew were being observed. More chilling was a detailed journal documenting Walsh's thoughts about Elaine. The entries began professionally, noting their interactions during his IT work at the dental office, but they quickly devolved into fantasy, describing a relationship that existed only in his mind. "She smiled at me today," one entry read. "She knows we're meant to be together. She's just afraid to acknowledge it." Walsh was brought in for questioning on May 2, 2023, 15 days after Elaine's disappearance. For hours, he maintained his innocence, insisting he barely knew Elaine, that any interactions had been purely professional. But when confronted with the evidence from his home, his demeanor changed. The confident denial gave way to a strange, almost peaceful resignation. "You don't understand," he told Detective Holder, his voice eerily calm. "She wanted to be with me. She was sending me signals, but she was afraid of what others would think, so we planned it together." According to Walsh, he and Elaine had orchestrated her disappearance so they could start a new life together, away from the judging eyes of Pinehurst. It was a narrative completely at odds with all evidence, with everything known about Elaine Mercer. The search for Elaine intensified. Walsh's property, 5 acres of wooded land, was combed inch by inch. His car was forensically examined. Cell phone records were analyzed to track his movements in the days surrounding Elaine's disappearance. On May 7, 2023, the investigation led to an abandoned hunting cabin 30 miles north of Pinehurst. The property had no connection to Walsh on paper, but cell tower data placed his phone in the vicinity multiple times in the weeks before Elaine vanished. Inside the cabin, officers found Elaine's wallet, her dental office ID badge, and a single earring that her mother identified as part of a pair she had given Elaine for her birthday. But there was no sign of Elaine herself. The floor of the cabin had been recently cleaned with industrial-strength bleach. Luminol testing revealed traces of blood that had been nearly, but not completely, erased. DNA testing would later confirm it was Elaine's. Jeremy Walsh was charged with kidnapping and presumed homicide on May 10, 2023. During his arraignment, he appeared calm, almost detached, maintaining that Elaine was alive, that she had changed her identity and was waiting for him, that this was all part of their plan. As the case progressed toward trial, the evidence against Walsh mounted. His internet history revealed searches on how to dispose of bodies, how to clean crime scenes, and the decomposition rates of human remains in various environments. Yet despite extensive searches of the surrounding forests, lakes, and abandoned properties, Elaine Mercer's body was never found. The trial began in September 2023, drawing national attention to the small town of Pinehurst. The prosecution built a compelling case based on circumstantial evidence: the shrine, the journal, the cabin, the blood evidence. The defense argued that without a body, without witnesses to any actual crime, the case was built on speculation. In the end, the jury deliberated for just 7 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. Jeremy Walsh was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. To this day, he maintains that Elaine is alive. In a prison interview granted to a true crime podcast in early 2024, Walsh insisted, "She's waiting for me. This is just a temporary separation, you'll see." Donna Mercer visits her daughter's empty grave once a week, placing fresh flowers beside the headstone that marks not a body, but a memory. The small town of Pinehurst has moved on in the way that small towns do, with quiet remembrance and a new wariness that wasn't there before. Detective Samantha Holder still keeps a photograph of Elaine on her desk, a reminder of the case that defined her career in Pinehurst and of the questions that remain unanswered. The hardest part for everyone, Holder reflects, is not knowing exactly what happened in those final hours, not being able to give Donna the closure of laying her daughter properly to rest. And somewhere in the forests surrounding Pinehurst, in a location known only to Jeremy Walsh, and perhaps to the silent trees themselves, lies the truth of what happened to Elaine Mercer on that April night when the knock her mother expected never came. Crime 8, the quiet neighborhood of Oakwood Heights in Dearborn, Michigan, was the kind of place where people knew each other's routines. It was mid-October 2019 when 27-year-old Melissa Henning first noticed something wasn't right. The trees were shedding their amber leaves onto the sidewalks, and the evening air carried the first real chill of fall. Like many young professionals in the area, Melissa worked remotely 3 days a week for a marketing firm in Detroit, spending her other days at the company's downtown office. Melissa had grown up in Lansing with her parents and younger brother. After graduating from Michigan State with a degree in communications, she'd moved to Dearborn for work and had gradually built a small but reliable circle of friends. Her apartment, a modest one-bedroom on the second floor of a converted Victorian house, was her sanctuary. She decorated it with plants and framed photographs of family vacations to the Upper Peninsula and Mackinac Island. Every Thursday evening, Melissa would visit her friend Caitlin Peterson across town. The two had met in a yoga class 2 years prior and maintained a weekly ritual of takeout and reality TV shows. Driving across town wasn't practical with the evening traffic, and Melissa didn't own a car, so she typically used rideshare apps for the 20-minute journey. On October 17th, a Thursday evening like any other, Melissa ordered her usual ride around 6:15 p.m. The app showed a silver Honda Civic would arrive in 4 minutes, driven by someone named Ray. She pulled on her burgundy cardigan, pocketed her phone, and headed downstairs to wait on the porch, just as the evening streetlights flickered on. The Honda pulled up right on time. Melissa approached the vehicle, checking the license plate against the one displayed on her app. It matched. She opened the rear passenger door and slid into the back seat. "Hi, Melissa," the driver said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. He was in his early 40s with thinning dark hair and wire-rimmed glasses. His voice was pleasant, conversational. "Heading to Westfield Drive again. You left your scarf in the trunk last time." Melissa felt a sudden chill that had nothing to do with the October evening. She had never seen this man before. She had certainly never been in his car, and yet somehow he knew her destination, the address she had just entered into the app moments ago, and was speaking as if they were already acquainted. "I'm sorry," she said carefully, her hand still on the door handle. "I think you might be confusing me with someone else. This is actually my first time using this service to go to that address." The driver smiled in the mirror. "Maybe I'm thinking of another passenger. Let me check if the scarf is still back there, navy blue with little white polka dots, right?" Without waiting for her answer, he popped the trunk latch and stepped out of the car. Melissa sat frozen, her mind racing. She did own a navy blue scarf with white polka dots. She'd bought it at a boutique downtown just 2 weeks ago. She had worn it only a handful of times. The driver returned a moment later, holding the scarf, her scarf. He handed it to her through the open driver's window before getting back into the car. "There you go," he said casually. "Must have fallen out of your bag last time." Melissa took the scarf with numb fingers. It was definitely hers. She recognized the small snag near one edge where it had caught on her coat zipper. The label from the boutique was still attached, partially torn as she had left it after deciding to keep the item. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice sounding distant to her own ears. She considered getting out of the car but found herself unable to move. The doors locked with a soft click as the driver pulled away from the curb. "So how's work been?" he asked, glancing at her again in the rearview mirror. "Still having trouble with that project manager, what was his name, Michael?" Melissa's blood ran cold. She had been struggling with a difficult project manager named Michael for weeks, but she had only ever discussed it with Caitlin and her mother, never with a rideshare driver she'd never met. "I don't think we've met before," she said firmly, trying to keep her voice steady. "How do you know about my work?" The driver laughed lightly. "You told me all about it last Thursday, don't you remember? You were pretty upset about that deadline he moved up." They drove past the local convenience store where Melissa often stopped for coffee. The driver slowed slightly, saying, "You usually ask me to stop here for your iced vanilla latte, but we're running a bit late today. Your friend Caitlin probably has drinks ready anyway, right?" Melissa felt her chest tighten. She did always buy an iced vanilla latte before going to Caitlin's, and Caitlin did always have wine waiting. She pulled out her phone, pretending to check a message while actually opening her rideshare app history. There was no record of any previous rides with a driver named Ray. In fact, she hadn't used the service at all in over 2 weeks. "I think there's been some mistake," she said carefully. "I'd like you to pull over, please." The driver's eyes met hers in the mirror again. "We're almost there, Melissa. Just relax. By the way, how's your mom doing after her surgery? You were worried about her recovery last time we talked." Melissa's mother had undergone minor surgery just 3 days ago, something Melissa had mentioned only to close friends and family. She hadn't taken any ride shares since before her mother's procedure. "I never told you about my mother," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Who are you? How do you know these things about me?" The driver continued as if he hadn't heard her question. "We're here," he announced, pulling up to Caitlin's apartment building. It was a modern complex with a security gate, a gate that required a code to enter. Without hesitation, the driver punched in the correct 6-digit code, and the gate swung open. "I didn't give you the code," Melissa said, her voice shaking now. "You did last time," Ray replied calmly, driving through and pulling up to the building entrance. "You were carrying those heavy grocery bags for Caitlin's birthday dinner, remember? You had me punch it in while you held onto the cake." Caitlin's birthday had been 2 months ago. Melissa had indeed brought a cake and groceries to her apartment, but she had driven there with another friend. She had never used a rideshare for that occasion. As the car stopped, Melissa grabbed her belongings and quickly got out. "Thank you for the ride," she said automatically, backing away from the vehicle. "See you next Thursday, Melissa," Ray said with a friendly wave before driving away. Melissa stood frozen on the sidewalk, clutching her navy scarf, watching until the silver Honda disappeared around the corner. Only then did she rush to Caitlin's apartment, ringing the bell repeatedly until her friend answered. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost," Caitlin said, ushering her inside. "The driver," Melissa gasped, still clutching the scarf. "He knew things about me, things I never told him. He had my scarf, he knew about my work, about my mom, about your birthday. He knew the gate code." Caitlin guided her to the couch. "Slow down, start from the beginning." Melissa recounted the entire experience while Caitlin listened, her expression growing increasingly concerned. "We need to report this to the rideshare company," Caitlin said finally, "and maybe the police. This guy is clearly stalking you somehow." They filed a report with both the rideshare company and the local police that same evening. The rideshare company assured them they would investigate the driver immediately, while the police took down the details with what seemed like mild interest, explaining that without any explicit threats or physical harm, there wasn't much they could do but document the incident. The next morning, Melissa received a call from the rideshare company. According to their records, her driver had been a woman named Andrea, not a man named Ray. The vehicle details matched what was in the app, a silver Honda Civic, but the company insisted that Ray wasn't one of their registered drivers in the Dearborn area. They promised to investigate further, but suggested that perhaps Melissa had gotten into the wrong vehicle. "But the license plate matched what was in my app," Melissa insisted, "and he knew my name, my destination." The representative had no explanation for this discrepancy. Over the next few days, Melissa grew increasingly paranoid. She installed new locks on her apartment door and window bars on her first-floor windows. She stopped using rideshare services altogether and borrowed a friend's car when necessary. She varied her routes to work and back, watching constantly for silver Hondas. A week passed with no sign of Ray. Melissa began to wonder if she had somehow imagined or exaggerated the experience, despite the physical evidence of her returned scarf. Then, on the following Thursday, her doorbell rang at exactly 6:15 p.m. Melissa approached the door cautiously and looked through the peephole. Ray stood on her porch, car keys in hand, smiling pleasantly as if he were expected. She didn't open the door. Instead, she called out, "How did you find my apartment? What do you want from me?" "I'm here for our usual Thursday ride, Melissa." Ray's voice came through the door, sounding genuinely confused. "You're going to be late for Caitlin's. Don't you remember scheduling the pickup?" Melissa hadn't scheduled anything. She checked her phone. No rideshare app was open. No ride was scheduled. "I'm calling the police," she said, her voice trembling as she dialed 911. "No need to do that," Ray replied, his tone still conversational. "I just thought you might want this back. You left it in my car last week." He held up her phone charger, a charger Melissa was certain was still in her purse. She reached into her bag, felt around, and found nothing where the charger should have been. The 911 operator answered, and Melissa reported the situation, giving her address and describing Ray. She kept her voice low, staying away from the door. "Officers are on their way," the operator assured her. "Stay on the line with me." "I'll just leave this here for you," Ray called through the door. Melissa heard something being set down on her porch. "See you next Thursday." When police arrived 12 minutes later, there was no sign of Ray. On the porch, they found Melissa's phone charger and a handwritten note that read simply, "You told me you prefer predictable Thursday routines. Same time next week." The officers took the note as evidence and searched the area, but found no trace of a silver Honda or anyone matching Ray's description. They took Melissa's statement again, this time with more serious attention given the stalking nature of the incident. Detective Marcus Holt was assigned to the case. A 20-year veteran of the Dearborn Police Department, he specialized in stalking and harassment cases. He interviewed Melissa extensively about her routine, her social media presence, and anyone who might have access to her personal information. "The concerning thing here," Detective Holt explained, "is the level of detailed personal information this individual has. The scarf, the work issues, your mother's surgery, these aren't things someone would learn just by following you around for a few days." "Could someone have hacked my phone?" Melissa asked, "or my social accounts?" "Possibly," the detective admitted. "We'll need to check your devices, but some of this information, like conversations with your project manager, wouldn't be on your social media." Over the next few days, police tech experts examined Melissa's phone and laptop, but found no evidence of hacking or spyware. Her social media accounts appeared secure. The rideshare company continued to insist that no driver named Ray worked for them in the area, and that the registered driver for Melissa's October 17th ride had definitely been Andrea, a 52-year-old woman who had been with the company for 3 years without incident. Melissa moved temporarily to her parents' home in Lansing, taking a leave of absence from work. Detective Holt assigned a patrol car to periodically check her Dearborn apartment. For 2 weeks, there was no sign of Ray. Then, on the first Thursday of November, Caitlin called Melissa in a panic. "He was here," she said, her words tumbling out. "That driver you described, Ray. He showed up at my door saying he had a delivery for you, that you'd left something in his car again. When I told him you weren't here, he just smiled and said he knew that. He said he'd been to your parents' house in Lansing yesterday, and you weren't there either." Melissa felt her blood turn to ice. She hadn't told anyone outside her immediate family and workplace where she was staying, and no one had visited her parents' home. "What did he leave?" Melissa asked, dreading the answer. "A photograph," Caitlin said quietly, "of you sleeping in your bedroom at your parents' house. It's dated yesterday." The police investigation intensified. Officers were dispatched to both Melissa's apartment and her parents' home in Lansing. Security cameras were installed. Friends and family were interviewed. The photograph was genuine, showing Melissa asleep in her childhood bedroom at her parents' home, but no one could explain how it had been taken. The doors had been locked. The security system had been armed. No windows had been disturbed. 3 more Thursdays passed with no contact from Ray. Melissa eventually returned to work, though she moved to a new apartment in a building with 24-hour security. She changed her phone number, deleted her social media accounts, and altered her routines. Detective Holt assured her they were making progress in identifying the stalker, though he couldn't share specific details of the ongoing investigation. On the 4th Thursday after the photograph incident, Melissa was working late at the office. Most of her colleagues had gone home hours earlier. At precisely 6:15 p.m., she received a call from a blocked number on her new, unlisted work phone. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Hello, Melissa," Ray's now familiar voice greeted her. "I see you've been avoiding our Thursday rides." "How did you get this number?" she demanded, signaling frantically to the one remaining coworker across the office to call security. "You gave it to me," Ray replied calmly, "the first time we met." "We've never met before October," Melissa insisted. "I don't know who you are or what you want from me." There was a moment of silence on the line. "Melissa," Ray finally said, his voice taking on a tone of concern, "I've been your Thursday driver for over 2 years now, every week without fail. We've had dozens of conversations about your work, your family, your friends. You've fallen asleep in my backseat at least 3 times after long days at the office." "That's not true," Melissa whispered, even as a cold sense of uncertainty crept into her mind. "Check your old phone," Ray suggested. "The one you lost last year and replaced. You took so many selfies in my car on the way to Caitlin's. You were always texting and taking photos during our rides." Melissa hadn't lost a phone last year. She'd had the same device for nearly 3 years before upgrading just a month ago. Hadn't she? "I have to go," she said, hanging up as security arrived at her desk. The investigation into Ray continued for months, but yielded few concrete answers. The police found no record of anyone matching his description or using that name in connection with any rideshare company in Michigan. The phone number he had called from was registered to a burner phone purchased with cash at a convenience store 50 miles away. The security cameras at both Melissa's apartment building and her parents' home had captured no suspicious activity, and certainly no one entering or taking photographs. Melissa eventually moved out of state, changing her name and appearance. She refused to use rideshare services and avoided establishing predictable routines. For a time, it seemed that Ray had disappeared from her life. Then one evening in her new city, as she was walking home from the grocery store, a silver Honda Civic pulled up beside her. The passenger window rolled down. "Need a ride?" Ray asked. "It's getting dark, and you still have 3 blocks to go to your new apartment on Ashford Street." Melissa hadn't told anyone her new address. She had paid cash for the first month's rent and used her new legal name on all paperwork. As she stood frozen on the sidewalk, Ray smiled kindly. "Don't worry, I'm not following you. I've just always been your driver, ever since the beginning." "The beginning of what?" Melissa managed to ask. Ray's smile never wavered. "I'll see you next Thursday," he said before driving away. To this day, Dearborn police still list the case as open but inactive. Detective Holt occasionally re-examines the file, but has found no new leads. The rideshare company maintains that no driver named Ray has ever worked for them in the Michigan area. Melissa's family has not heard from her in over a year, though they occasionally receive postcards from different cities, always postmarked on Thursdays, always with the same message. "I'm safe. He hasn't found me yet, but he says he'll see me next Thursday." Crime 9, she'd installed an app to monitor air quality in her home. It recorded ambient sound to detect pollution. But one night it sent her an alert: unusual vocal activity detected in bedroom. She listened. It was her voice begging someone to stop. Alina Marsh lived alone in a modest brownstone apartment in Brightwater, Massachusetts. At 34, she had established herself as a respected environmental scientist at the local university. known for her meticulous research on indoor air quality. Her colleagues described her as methodical, quiet, and intensely private. Alina's routine rarely varied: morning coffee at 6:30, work until 6:00, dinner alone, then reading until bedtime at precisely 10:15. In March 2023, Alina began experiencing unexplained headaches and fatigue. Being in her field of expertise, she suspected poor air quality in her century-old building might be the culprit. She installed several air purifiers throughout her home and downloaded AirGuard Pro, a new app that promised continuous monitoring of indoor pollutants through her smartphone's microphone. The app uses ambient sound patterns to detect anomalies consistent with air quality issues, the description had read. Alina found the technology fascinating. It could detect the subtle sounds of mold growth, gas leaks, or unusual particulate matter in the air. For the first 2 weeks, AirGuard Pro functioned exactly as expected. It sent her daily reports showing acceptable levels of common pollutants, with occasional warnings about increased carbon dioxide when she forgot to open a window. Alina's headaches began to subside, and she recommended the app to several colleagues. On April 17th, a Tuesday like any other, Alina followed her usual evening routine. She prepared a simple pasta dinner, read 3 chapters of her current novel, and was asleep by 10:30. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. At 3:17 a.m., her phone chimed with an alert from AirGuard Pro. Half asleep, she reached for it, expecting a routine notification about overnight air quality. Instead, the screen displayed unusual vocal activity detected in bedroom 2:43 a.m. Alina frowned. She lived alone and had been asleep. The apartment was silent now. She tapped the notification, bringing up the app's interface. A new feature she hadn't noticed before allowed playback of anomalous audio events. Her finger hovered over the play button for several seconds before she pressed it. The recording began with silence, then soft, rustling sounds. Alina recognized the familiar creaks of her old apartment settling in the night, but then something else emerged, a voice, her voice. "Please don't, I can't." The words were unmistakably in her voice, though distorted by what sounded like terror. In the background, something heavy moved across the floor. Another voice murmured something unintelligible. Then her voice again, louder. "Stop, please stop." The recording ended with what sounded like a sob cut short. Alina sat motionless in her darkened bedroom. The digital clock on her nightstand read 3:22 a.m. She turned on every light in the apartment and checked each room, closet, and under the furniture. Nothing was disturbed. The windows remained locked, the front door securely bolted with no signs of tampering. She played the recording 3 more times, each replay sending a deeper chill through her body. It was definitely her voice, yet she had no memory of speaking those words or of anyone being in her apartment. She had slept through the night, hadn't she? By morning, exhaustion had settled into Alina's bones. She called in sick for the first time in 3 years and spent the day researching the AirGuard Pro app. Online forums revealed no similar experiences, only routine discussions about air quality measurements and filter recommendations. That evening, after much deliberation, Alina decided to contact the developer of the app. She composed a carefully worded email describing the incident without sounding alarmist, attaching the audio file. She received an automated response thanking her for the feedback and promising a review within 3-5 business days. 2 days passed without incident. Alina slept poorly, waking at the slightest sound. She considered staying with her sister in Boston, but ultimately decided against it, feeling foolish about being frightened by what was likely a technical glitch. On the third night, April 20th, Alina awoke naturally at 4:26 a.m. She reached for her phone to check for notifications. There were none from AirGuard Pro, but her email showed a response from app support timestamped 11:43 p.m. Dear Ms. Marsh, thank you for your inquiry regarding AirGuard Pro. Our technical team has analyzed your audio file and confirmed that it does not originate from our application. AirGuard Pro does not have the capability to record or store voice data beyond immediate processing for air particle detection. We suggest checking other applications or devices that may have access to your microphone. Regards, Technical Support Team. Alina read the email twice, her unease deepening. If the recording hadn't come from AirGuard Pro, where had it come from? And why did it show her own voice pleading with someone who wasn't there? She opened her phone's settings and reviewed the permissions granted to each app. Nothing seemed unusual. As she was about to close settings, she noticed something odd. Her phone showed 16 GB of storage used, significantly more than the 9 GB she had used the previous week. Alina opened her file manager and sorted by date. There, in a folder she didn't recognize named Sys Backup 472, she found dozens of audio files dating back 3 months, well before she had installed AirGuard Pro. With trembling fingers, she played the oldest file. It contained nothing but the ambient sounds of her apartment, water running, pages turning, the refrigerator humming. She skipped ahead to a file from 2 months ago. This one captured her talking to her sister on the phone about their mother's birthday gift. Each subsequent recording contained more personal moments, Alina singing in the shower, muttering to herself while working, even crying after a difficult day at work. The timestamps showed they were recorded primarily at night when she was either asleep or should have been alone. Detective Michael Hernandez received Alina's case on April 25th. Her sister had reported her missing after failing to reach her for 3 days. The detective found Alina's apartment undisturbed, except for her phone left on the kitchen table, unlocked and open to a folder containing hundreds of audio files. The investigation revealed that Alina's phone had been compromised by sophisticated spyware, likely installed when she connected to public Wi-Fi at her favorite coffee shop. The malware disguised itself as system files and hijacked her microphone, recording at programmed intervals and during detected speech. More disturbing were the building's security logs, which showed Alina's key fob being used to enter the building at 1:22 a.m. on April 21st, followed by another entry at 1:37 a.m. using a different resident's credentials. Both entries occurred after Alina had last been seen entering her apartment at 5:45 p.m. on April 20th. The case took an even more unsettling turn when Detective Hernandez listened to the final audio file on Alina's phone, recorded at 2:12 a.m. on April 21st. It contained Alina's voice, frantic and whispering. "They're coming back. I found what they were looking for, but they don't know that I know. The pattern in the recordings, it's not random. It's..." The recording ended abruptly. 6 months later, Alina's case remains officially open but inactive. Her apartment has new tenants, a young couple who complained to building management about weird technical issues with their phones when they first moved in, problems that mysteriously resolved themselves after they replaced their router. Detective Hernandez keeps a copy of Alina's audio files on a secured drive, occasionally listening to them late at night. He's convinced there's something he's missing, some pattern in the recordings that Alina had begun to decipher before she disappeared. Sometimes when he listens to the final recording, he swears he can hear something in the background beneath Alina's frightened whispers, the sound of someone else breathing. Story 10, nestled on the outskirts of town, a house at the border of the woods lay shrouded in mystery, its presence an unspoken secret among the locals. The aging structure stood solitary, with darkened windows and a porch burdened by the weight of time. No one could claim ownership, and the origins of its construction remained lost in the whispers of the wind. A group of hikers, led by Mason Wright, inadvertently stumbled upon the enigmatic house during one of their wanderings. As they drew nearer, a peculiar sight greeted them, names carved into the wooden siding, etched deep like silent warnings. Among the list of names, one stood out fresh and untouched, a name unfamiliar to all except for the shiver-stricken Mason, who whispered, "That's mine." The night called forth an unsettling revelation as Mason made a chilling report of his discovery to the authorities. What started as a routine trespassing incident soon unfolded into a perplexing enigma that left even seasoned officers baffled. Detective Sarah Keller arrived at the scene as dusk blanketed the forest, her flashlight piercing through the shadows to reveal the weathered facade of the house. The names, 27 in total, cascaded down the wall, some barely visible with age while others appeared freshly carved. At the very bottom, Mason Wright stood out, the mark still imbued with the scent of newly cut wood. "I've never set foot here before," Mason insisted, his words mingling with the frosty air. "I can't fathom how my name found its way here." The ensuing investigation delved into the haunting pasts of each name inscribed on the wall. The findings sent a chill down the spines of the detective team. Every name belonged to an individual who had vanished without a trace over the past 40 years, all while hiking alone in these very woods. Forensic analysts meticulously documented the carvings, noting the intricacies of each mark and the eerie consistency in the disappearances linked to them. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, harkened back to a vanishing from nearly 4 decades ago, a tale of a young woman lost to the wilderness without a trace. As Detective Keller probed deeper, Mason's innocence seemed unshakable. His accounts held steadfast, devoid of any ties to the haunting history of the house or its macabre engravings. The focus then shifted to his companions, unraveling a thread of unsettling discoveries that blurred the line between reality and the unknown. Emily Chen's photographs unveiled a spectral presence lurking in the background, a tall, slender figure obscured by the foliage in a series of haunting images. Despite their vehement denials, the presence of the mysterious figure cast a pall over the investigation, hinting at unseen forces at play. A search of the house's interior unearthed a chilling revelation in the basement: personal effects of the missing hikers meticulously arranged on shelves, each item bearing a name corresponding to those on the exterior wall. Bloodstains, faint yet haunting, hinted at a darker truth concealed beneath the surface, leading the investigators deeper into a web of unsolved mysteries. The search for answers led to the enigmatic past of Victor Blackwood, a reclusive hunter whose connection to the house wove a tapestry of dread and intrigue. Blackwood's journal, discovered hidden in a crude hunting blind, revealed a chilling evolution from tracking wildlife to stalking human prey, with detailed accounts of his victims' selection etched in ink. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned jurisdictions, with a relentless pursuit for the elusive figure yielding little but whispers in the wind. Mason's growing paranoia, coupled with inexplicable occurrences, painted a picture of impending doom that loomed over the investigation like a shadow. The unraveling of events climaxed with a sinister revelation, a freshly carved name belonging to a member of the investigative team concealed within the bowels of the house. The ominous message etched on Mason's bedroom wall marked a turning point, signaling a dangerous game of predator and prey. As the net closed in, a phantom figure emerged from the depths of the forest, defying all attempts to capture it. The house, now a sentinel of the unknown, stood as a testament to the lingering mysteries that haunted the woods, its secrets buried within the whispers of the trees. The tale of the house at the edge of the woods endures, a cautionary legend passed down among the wary and the brave. The names on its walls remain a chilling reminder of the price paid by those who dare to venture too close, lost to the shadows where truth and terror intertwine in a dance of eternal mystery. And so the house stands, a silent sentinel to the enigma that lingers, beckoning the curious and the cautious to tread lightly, lest they too become a name unspoken in the haunting lore of the woods. Story 11: The Nursery Secrets. She had a desire to refresh the nursery before the baby's arrival. The walls wore a faded blue, a hue that carried hidden tales within its aged layers. As she carefully applied the first coat of white paint, a mysterious revelation unfolded beneath the emergence of letters, faint at first, then growing sharper, more defined. A message was unveiled beneath the surface. "Don't let it hear you," her breath hitched in surprise. Stepping back, her eyes widened at the sight of tiny handprints imprinted in the fresh paint, positioned too high for any child to reach. This discovery within the nursery of the Morgan residence marked the commencement of what would later be known as the Whispering House case. The young couple had acquired the Victorian-style home just months prior, lured by an unbelievably low price. The real estate agent had merely brushed off the property's dark past as minor cosmetic issues. Detective Sarah Klein, notebook in hand, rang the doorbell of the residence. A pregnant woman answered, her belly pronounced beneath paint-stained overalls. Weariness marked her face with dark circles, a telltale sign of sleepless nights. The detective observed the woman's trembling hands as she recounted the eerie message and the mysterious handprints. The previous owners vanished overnight, the woman shared. Neighbors mentioned they left abruptly with no moving truck, only packing essentials into their car. Inside the historic home, Detective Klein's footsteps echoed on creaky floorboards as she made her way to the nursery. There she scrutinized the partially painted wall, the cryptic message still visible where the paint job had been abandoned. Beside it, 5 small handprints adorned the wet paint, positioned at an adult's shoulder height. Back at the precinct, Detective Klein delved into records regarding the property. The house had changed ownership 8 times in 30 years, a remarkably high turnover rate. Each family had resided for less than 2 years. More unsettling were the child welfare reports linked to 3 of those families. Children reported hearing whispers from the walls and feeling watched as they slept. The detective delved deeper, sifting through construction records and historical documents. The house had once belonged to Alina Blackwood, a wealthy widow who ran a small orphanage on the premises during the early industrial era. Newspaper clippings recounted the disappearance of 5 children under her care. Authorities of that era presumed the children had run away, a common fate for orphans at the time. Upon Alina's passing, workers renovating the house stumbled upon a hidden room behind the nursery wall. Inside, they discovered children's belongings, tiny shoes, toys, and garments, but no remains were found. The case went cold, relegated to dusty archives. Interviewing former residents, Detective Klein uncovered a disconcerting pattern. Each family with children reported strange incidents, toys moving on their own, laughter echoing through empty corridors, and crayon drawings appearing mysteriously. Most dismissed these events as mere imagination until the unsettling messages surfaced during repainting. A forensic linguist compared the writing to samples from Alina Blackwood's journals, confirming the match. More chilling were the handprints, consistent in size and placement over the years, despite different children residing in the home. The investigation took a grim turn when the detective persuaded the current owners to permit ground-penetrating radar in the basement. Anomalies in the readings pointed to 5 distinct shapes beneath the concrete floor, each sized like a child. Breaking through the concrete revealed a horrifying truth: 5 sets of small remains arranged in a circle. Forensic analysis indicated the children had perished during Alina's tenure in the house. Each child wore a pendant engraved with their name, those of the 5 orphans who had purportedly run away. Luminol was sprayed throughout the nursery, revealing glowing handprints on every wall in the darkness, hidden beneath layers of paint, unseen to the naked eye. Countless handprints adorned the walls at varying heights, as if the children had been trying to escape. Alina's journals, unearthed from county archives, exposed her twisted beliefs. She thought orphaned children possessed a unique spiritual energy. By confining them in the secret room, she aimed to harness their life force to prolong her own existence. The children had etched their warnings into the wall, hoping future occupants would uncover their tragic fate. The case concluded with the proper burial of the 5 victims, no longer deemed runaways but acknowledged as victims of murder. The house remained deserted thereafter, the pregnant couple refusing to return even for their belongings. Detective Klein finalized her report, including photographs of the luminol illuminated handprints and the hidden message. She noted that while justice had been served for the victims, an inexplicable presence lingered in the house, reaching out through time and layers of paint. The nursery walls were demolished during cleanup, yet workers reported hearing children's whispers emanating from the debris. None dared to return after their shifts. The house was ultimately condemned, a cold case filed away in a dusty cabinet, a closure in physicality, but with lingering spiritual enigmas left unanswered. The detective kept a photograph from the case, a haunting image of 5 luminol handprints glowing in the darkness, a poignant reminder that some crimes leave indelible imprints that no fresh coat of paint can conceal. Story 12. The apartment had sat in silence for months, untouched by human presence. When the new tenants crossed the threshold, they expected only remnants of neglect, dust settling on forgotten furniture, memories left behind. Yet one door stood stubbornly closed, defying their attempts to coax it open. A closet, its secrets locked within. The landlord, with a sense of trepidation, finally pried it ajar, revealing more than just old coats or abandoned trinkets. Inside, the walls bore witness to a silent struggle, etched with deep, jagged scratches that spoke of desperation and confinement. In the dim corner, an ancient flip phone lay dormant, its screen illuminated by a single unread message, a haunting echo of the past. Detective Morgan Shaw, seasoned in the ways of darkness, felt a shiver run down her spine at the scene before her. It wasn't the presence of gore or violence that unsettled her, but the quiet horror of those markings, testimony to someone's battle for freedom within that cramped space. Forensics now, she directed her partner, Officer Reed, who diligently captured the haunting evidence through his lens, and gather all records of the previous tenant. The cryptic message on the phone whispered, "I know what you did," a cryptic clue to a mystery buried in shadows. The landlord, his demeanor nervous and evasive, shared scant details of the previous tenant's sudden departure, no forwarding address, just unpaid rent. A quiet young woman, he murmured, avoiding the closet's accusing gaze. No trouble, or so I thought. Forensic analysis unveiled a chilling truth. Within the scratches traces of blood, mostly belonging to a single individual identified as Emma Caldwell, a missing woman of 28. Yet among the genetic echoes, two distinct DNA profiles emerged, one unknown, the other belonging to Derek Mercer, a man declared deceased 2 years prior in a tragic accident. Shaw's mind spun with questions as she delved deeper into Emma's life. A pattern of missed calls, a mystery boyfriend shrouded in secrecy, and a sudden cessation of contact with her sister, all threads leading to a tangled web of deceit and danger. Surveillance footage hinted at a shadowy figure, a man in a baseball cap lingering in Emma's shadow, his presence a sinister omen. The discovery of Derek Mercer's fingerprints on the closet's doorknob unraveled a macabre tale of deception and captivity. He staged his death, Shaw mused, tracing the connections woven by fate and fear. The enigmatic DNA sample led them to another missing woman, Lynette Porter, whose phantom presence haunted Emma's narrative. Mercer's dark web extended, ensnaring lives in a twisted dance of control and manipulation. Journals of obsession, chilling photographs, and damning videos unveiled Mercer's malevolent handiwork. Emma's fate sealed in shadows, her final act a silent plea for justice, inscribed in that unread message, a beacon in the darkness. The hunt for Mercer spanned realms of the living and the dead, a relentless pursuit of a phantom who reveled in others' suffering. As the net closed around him, Mercer clung to his facade of normalcy, a mask slipping to reveal the abyss within. At his trial, the truth unfurled like a sinister tapestry, exposing the depths of Mercer's depravity and deceit. Emma's body remained a ghost, lost in the echoes of a tortured soul, but her message, a silent scream preserved in digital amber, spoke volumes in the hushed courtroom. The jury's swift verdict sealed Mercer's fate, a life sentence without reprieve. As the gavel fell, Shaw felt a whisper of closure amidst the shadows. Lynette Porter's voice, a beacon of resilience, echoed through the chamber, a testament to the light that endures even in the darkest of nights. The investigation reshaped protocols, illuminating the hidden patterns that lurked beneath the surface of seemingly ordinary lives. Shaw, keeper of secrets and seeker of truth, held onto the closet door, a stark reminder of the fragility of existence and the resilience of the human spirit. Story 13. In the quiet depths of a stormy night, she found herself reluctantly ascending to the attic, compelled by the persistent drip of rainwater through a leak in the roof. The attic, a realm of forgotten treasures shrouded in layers of dust and wisps of cobwebs, held an eerie air that made her skin prickle with unease. Amidst the shadows, nestled in the farthest corner, stood an old dollhouse, a miniature replica of a home, every intricate detail painstakingly crafted. Yet as her gaze fell upon it, a knot of dread twisted in her stomach. The tiny figures within were not mere dolls, but exquisite hand-carved likenesses of her own family, each miniature person meticulously placed, mirroring the exact positions of her family members downstairs, except for one. The figure portraying her stood near the attic door, its gaze seeming to follow her every move. Rebecca Morgan tentatively traced her finger along the roof of the dollhouse, feeling the indentation where the miniature version of herself stood, an unsettling sensation creeping through her that had nothing to do with the chill in the air. This dollhouse had no place in her life. This wasn't her childhood haven, but a temporary abode her family had recently relocated to. The revelation sparked a frantic call to law enforcement, setting in motion a chain of events that would unravel a disturbing mystery. Upon arrival at the suburban dwelling, officers were met with a family in distress, huddled in fear, refusing to return to the attic. Detective Sarah Harmon, the lead investigator, initially brushed off their concerns as mere paranoia, attributing the eerie dollhouse to a prank or the vivid imaginations of those adjusting to a new environment. Yet the intricate details captured within the miniatures left an indelible mark on her mind. Each tiny figure bore a striking resemblance to the family members, capturing unique traits and quirks with uncanny accuracy. The investigation took a chilling turn when forensic analysis revealed fingerprints on the dollhouse belonging to none of the family members. Even more unsettling were the microscopic cameras hidden within the miniature figure's eyes, all linked to a sophisticated surveillance system concealed beneath the dollhouse. Reviewing the Morgan family's movements unveiled a disquieting revelation. The positions of the tiny figures mirrored not just their current locations, but precise moments from various days, hinting at a meticulous observer who had studied their every move. We realized this went beyond mere stalking, Detective Harmon later recounted. The level of obsession displayed by the perpetrator was unlike anything we had encountered before. A hidden entrance in the pantry led investigators to a subterranean living space, littered with signs of a clandestine occupant who had been silently residing there before the Morgans' arrival. Food remnants, water bottles, and a makeshift bed hinted at a prolonged stay, raising perplexing questions about how the intruder had entered without detection. Property records unveiled a dark history surrounding the house, which had remained vacant for a year following the demise of the elderly owners. Their son, Martin Wells, had orchestrated the rental of the property, concealing his presence within the hidden chambers of the house. Interviews with neighbors yielded scant information, aside from fleeting glimpses of lights in the supposedly empty residence during its unoccupied period. A breakthrough in the investigation came through digital forensics, tracing the surveillance data to an apartment across town. Inside, a chilling tableau awaited the walls adorned with photographs of the Morgan family and previous occupants, alongside meticulous journal entries chronicling their daily routines. Most disturbing of all were the dozens of incomplete dollhouses, each representing a different household in the vicinity, a testament to Wells' elaborate web of surveillance. Martin Wells, during interrogation, remained disturbingly composed as he revealed his twisted motivations. "They were living in my home, sleeping in my parents' room. I needed to ensure they respected it," he articulated calmly. The psychological evaluation painted a portrait of possessive delusion, with Wells using the dollhouses as a means to exert control over both the property and its inhabitants, reducing them to mere playthings in his elaborate game. The Morgans, shattered by the violation of their privacy and safety, never returned to the house, choosing to forge a new path far from the haunting memories. Rebecca, in her victim impact statement, confessed to lingering fears and a persistent sense of being watched, a legacy of the sinister intrusion into their lives. Martin Wells faced a slew of charges, shedding light on the need for stricter real estate disclosure laws and vigilance in safeguarding the sanctity of one's home. The case of the dollhouse voyeur remains a poignant reminder of the shadows that lurk in the corners of familiarity, the unseen eyes that may linger undetected, turning lives into puppets on a macabre stage. As the wheels of justice turned and Martin Wells faced the consequences of his twisted obsession, the echoes of his voyeuristic legacy lingered, a cautionary tale of the darkness that can fester beneath seemingly ordinary surfaces. Story 14, the old Polaroid captured a forgotten birthday with smiles and flickering candles, nothing out of the ordinary. However, when the daughter inherited a box of old photos, she noticed something unsettling. In the background of the group, a figure lurked, a man shrouded in shadow, always just outside the candlelight glow. He was not part of the family, and no one remembered him being there. Yet, with each photo, he crept closer. Sarah Winters stumbled upon the collection while clearing out her mother's attic after the funeral. A simple cardboard box labeled Memories held a treasure trove of faded photographs from her childhood. Instead of bringing solace, the discovery turned into a nightmare. The first photo barely hinted at his presence, a dark silhouette on the edge of her 7th birthday party frame. By the second photo, he had moved inside, and in the third, he stood ominously behind her uncle, unnoticed by all. Trembling, Sarah called her father, questioning the mysterious man in the background. His silence was followed by a sharp intake of breath. "What man? There shouldn't be anyone but family," he finally replied. Digital copies of the Polaroids were sent to her father, who called back in disbelief. "We would have noticed a stranger," he said, his voice wavering. Detective Marcus Reed sat attentively as Sarah laid out the photos on his desk at the precinct. Rain drummed against the windows, casting shadows on the evidence. The detective's experienced hands moved from one photo to the next, studying them intently. "Did anyone recognize this man?" he inquired, his voice calm yet intrigued. Sarah confirmed that no one did, but she pointed out the progression in the photos. As the detective examined the sequence, a sense of unease settled in. The man in the photos seemed to be purposefully moving closer to the children, almost as if he had a sinister intent. Even in the final image, he loomed directly behind Sarah's younger self, a chilling hand outstretched just beyond the frame. Reed suggested the possibility of the photographer being responsible, but doubts lingered in his tone. Sarah clarified that her mother had taken all the photos, setting the timer before joining the frame. The detective opened a case file, contacting all surviving attendees from the party. No one remembered the mysterious man. Facial recognition software failed to unveil his identity, as he remained strategically hidden in every shot. However, Sarah's discovery of similar figures in other family albums reignited the investigation. Enhanced images revealed startling details: a scar, a ring, even a partial reflection showing hidden facial features. A breakthrough came from dental records, linking the figure to Robert Keller, a maintenance worker tied to unsolved child abductions from years past. Keller had access to rental properties where families gathered and children later vanished. Authorities uncovered buried items at Keller's former residence, including belongings of missing children. The pieces of the puzzle were coming together, connecting unsolved cases across decades. Alone in her apartment, Sarah pondered the photos that had unveiled a dark past. The detective's call confirmed the identification of remains near one of the vacation properties, a missing child. In the final birthday photo, the figure lurked in the shadows, an ominous presence unnoticed by all. The revelation tied together long-lost mysteries, offering closure to grieving families. As Sarah carefully placed the photos back in the box, she realized the chilling truth that sometimes the most dangerous threats are those unseen by the naked eye, lurking in the shadows of joyous celebrations, leaving behind only a faint trace of their sinister presence in frozen moments of time. Story 15, The Realtor's Secret. The listing from the realtor made no mention of a basement. The blueprints, carefully examined, revealed no trace of it. Yet fate had other plans for the Mercer family when they peeled back the worn carpet in their new home. Beneath it lay a hidden door, its handle rusted with time. With combined effort, they managed to pry it open, unveiling a stairway leading into darkness. The air that greeted them was musty, heavy with the aroma of damp earth. Descending the steps, they anticipated finding a storage room. However, what awaited them was far more unsettling. In the dim light of a solitary bulb hanging above, they discovered a single chair, and on the wall behind it, a chilling display, a series of photographs, each featuring a member of their own family. These were snapshots taken from within the very walls of their home, capturing moments they believed to be private. The Mercers had moved into the suburban property during the cold embrace of winter, seeking character and history in the two-story structure. Little did they know the depth of history embedded within those walls and how it would collide with their present in a way they could never have foreseen. Detective Sarah Connors arrived at the scene with her partner, the crime scene unit already at work securing the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer's voice had trembled on the phone as she described the hidden chamber beneath their living room. Connors wasted no time, instructing her team to document every detail before anyone else ventured into the mysterious basement. The forensic team's camera flashes illuminated the narrow stairwell, capturing the eerie atmosphere. As they ventured down, the basement revealed itself a compact space resembling a standard bedroom, with cold concrete walls painted a dull gray. In the center, a lone chair stood bolted to the floor. The stark light bulb above cast haunting shadows, swaying gently in an unseen draft. But it was the wall of photographs that held the most disturbing secrets, each image meticulously arranged in chronological order, offering a glimpse into the Mercer family's private lives. Examining the timestamps on the back of the prints, Connor's partner noted the images dated back weeks. Faces frozen in everyday moments, Mrs. Mercer dozing on the couch, Mr. Mercer at the kitchen table, the children in their rooms. There were no signs of forced entry, no theft, only a profound invasion of privacy that left the family shaken to its core. Delving deeper into the house's history, Connors uncovered a trail of unsettling discoveries. Previous owners had come and gone swiftly, each selling the property at a loss after brief stays. None had mentioned the hidden basement. The investigation took a chilling turn as inconsistencies in the property records emerged, blueprints altered, permits withdrawn, and inspection reports redacted. The breakthrough came when they located the contractor who had renovated the house years earlier. His denial of the existence of the basement clashed with the undeniable evidence before them. The truth lay hidden within the walls, waiting to be unveiled. Digital forensics uncovered a wealth of images on a hidden memory card, each depicting not just the Mercers, but past families as well. The violation extended beyond mere photography, as audio files revealed intimate conversations recorded within the house. The meticulous surveillance pointed to a presence that had lurked undetected for years. As they dug deeper, a narrow passage concealed behind the photographs led to a monitoring station. A journal, filled with eerie observations, bore the name of the property's original builder, Edward Kelvin. His ghostly presence loomed large as the investigation unfolded, revealing his twisted obsession with the families who had occupied the house. Fingerprint analysis confirmed the unthinkable Edward Kelvin had never truly left the house he built. He had become a shadow, watching, documenting, and believing himself the rightful guardian of the property. The manhunt concluded with Kelvin's discovery hidden within the walls, a spectral figure warped by his delusions. During questioning, Kelvin spoke of the families with detached fascination, viewing them as characters in his private drama. His distorted reality painted them as transient guests in what he considered his eternal abode. The Mercer family, like those before them, fled the house, leaving behind their possessions as a haunting reminder of the violation they had endured. Kelvin's trial laid bare the elaborate surveillance network he had constructed within the very framework of the house. Each brick had been laid with precision, creating a voyeuristic haven where he could observe his unwitting subjects. As the jury rendered its verdict, Kelvin remained aloof, lost in the labyrinth of his own mind. The property met its demise, razed to the ground and buried beneath layers of soil. But for the families who had unknowingly lived under Kelvin's watchful gaze, the scars remained. The violation of their privacy lingered, a specter haunting their memories, forever questioning if they had ever been truly alone in the house that once held their dreams. In quiet moments, they found themselves glancing at corners and crevices, wondering if unseen eyes still lingered, watching from the shadows of a past they could never forget. Story 16. The wooden plank shifted under her weight, causing a subtle creak as it came loose beneath her foot. It was a small movement, barely noticeable, yet it captured her attention like a whisper in the night. Intrigued, she knelt down and traced her fingers along the edges of the plank, sensing the hidden void beneath the seemingly solid floor. With gentle precision, she pried up the boards one by one, revealing a dark, narrow space that lay clandestine beneath her new dwelling. Sarah Coleman peered into the abyss that had been concealed beneath her very home, a shiver of unease dancing down her spine. Detective Morgan Reed stood silently behind her, observing the mix of fear and curiosity that flickered in Sarah's eyes. It was more than just a hidden room they had discovered. It was a breach of sanctuary, an intrusion of malevolence into what was meant to be a fresh beginning for Sarah. "Please do not disturb anything further." Detective Reed's voice, calm yet authoritative, broke the silence. She clicked on her flashlight, casting a beam of light that illuminated the secretive chamber. The walls were adorned with a collage of surveillance photographs capturing Sarah's every move entering buildings, chatting with friends, going about her daily life. A chilling shrine of obsession that had been lurking right beneath her feet, unbeknownst to her. The cottage had been purchased from the estate of Walter Green, an elderly recluse who had passed away with no known kin. The property had sat vacant for months before Sarah had made it her own. The real estate listing had painted a picture of charm and minor renovations needed, with no hint of the hidden truths lurking within. "I never met him, the previous owner." Sarah's voice was a mere whisper. The neighbors spoke of his reclusiveness. "I was told the basement access had been sealed off long ago. That's what the inspection report claimed." As crime scene investigators descended upon the hidden chamber, their equipment clattering against the wooden floors, a chilling reality began to unravel. The mattress, the chair, the tattered notebook all bore the fingerprints of Walter Green, a man who had been clandestinely observing Sarah for years, unbeknownst to her. The timeline pieced together by forensic analysts painted a haunting picture. Walter had been shadowing Sarah's every move for years, attending the same events, frequenting the same places, all while remaining a ghost in her world, a fixation that had escalated from mere fantasy to something far more sinister. During the investigation, Detective Reed's inquiries led her to a former coworker of Walter's, a man who fidgeted nervously as he divulged snippets of conversations with the deceased. "He'd talk about her, said she reminded him of someone. I thought it was harmless admiration," the man confessed, his eyes avoiding Reed's gaze. Reed's persistence bore fruit when a key found in Walter's workplace locker unlocked a storage unit registered in his name. The metal door rumbled open, revealing a meticulously arranged replica of Sarah's previous life, an eerie duplicate of her belongings, a mannequin resembling her sitting at a desk, and a calendar marked with a foreboding date. Further digging into Walter's past revealed a history of obsession and delusion, a dark shadow that had followed him since his youth. His fixation on Sarah had been a culmination of decades of untreated erotomania, a twisted belief that she was meant to be with him, regardless of reality. As Sarah made the difficult decision to sell the house, haunted by the thought of what could have been, the investigation concluded with Walter's demise. Yet the specter of his intentions lingered, a chilling reminder of the dangers that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. The cottage passed into new hands, unaware of its dark past. The hidden room was sealed off, the secrets buried once more beneath layers of fresh floorboards. Life carried on, but for those who had been touched by the shadows of Walter Green's obsession, the memory of the hidden chamber beneath the floor remained a haunting tale, a reminder of how close one can come to the edge of darkness without ever realizing it. Story 17. The tale began innocently enough for the new residents of the Victorian-era home, Michael and Sarah Klein. The house, with its elegant allure and whispers of a bygone era, beckoned to them with promises of charm and nostalgia. Little did they know, the faded wallpaper in the master bedroom held secrets far beyond their imagination. A simple water stain caught Sarah's eye one day, a yellowish blemish marring the floral wallpaper. Intrigued, they began peeling back the layers, uncovering a hidden narrative beneath the surface. Paisley patterns from the 1970s gave way to striped paper from an earlier time, leading them to a startling discovery buried deep within the third layer. In dark ink against aged beige paper, a name repeated itself endlessly: Eleanor Winters. The frantic, uneven script spoke of desperation and longing, leaving Michael and Sarah unsettled. Who was Eleanor Winters, and why was her name etched so fervently into the walls of their home? Their quest for answers led them down a winding path of mystery and intrigue. A search online revealed a missing persons case from decades past, with eerie parallels to the woman who had sold them the house. Margaret Cavendish, with her silver-streaked dark hair and enigmatic demeanor, bore a striking resemblance to the woman in the old photograph. As they delved deeper into the past, the line between reality and illusion blurred. The missing woman, Eleanor Winters, became a haunting presence in their lives, her story intertwined with theirs in ways they could never have imagined. The walls of their home whispered secrets of betrayal and tragedy, urging them to uncover the truth hidden within the layers of time. Their investigation led them to a revelation that shook the foundations of their reality. DNA analysis, hidden spaces, and forgotten identities unearthed a tangled web of deceit and madness. Eleanor Winters, Rebecca Eldridge, Margaret Cavendish, the names intertwined like threads in a macabre tapestry of lies and deception. Forensic teams descended upon their home, unearthing long-buried secrets and confronting the darkness that lurked within the walls. The past and present collided in a crescendo of revelation as the true nature of the house and its former occupants came to light. In the end, justice prevailed, but at a cost. The house that had once seemed a sanctuary now bore the weight of a tragic history, its walls bearing witness to a crime long forgotten. Michael and Sarah, unwitting players in a twisted drama, found themselves at the center of a story that would echo through the ages. As they watched the sun set from their front porch, the shadows lengthening across the garden, they knew that some mysteries were best left undisturbed. The house stood silent, its secrets buried beneath the facade of normalcy, waiting for the next curious soul to uncover its dark truths. And so, as night fell and the world drifted into dreams, the walls whispered their secrets to the stars, carrying the echoes of the past into the realm of sleep and shadow. Story 18. In the quiet neighborhood where time seemed to stand still, a house stood abandoned, a silent witness to a chilling mystery. Whispers among the neighbors spoke of the young woman who vanished, leaving the home untouched for years. But when new occupants dared to breach its walls, they uncovered a locked bedroom, frozen in time. As the door swung open, the musty air whispered of secrets long kept hidden. The room revealed itself like a forgotten memory, bed neatly made, mirror polished to perfection. Yet a sense of unease lingered, a presence felt but unseen. A solitary candle stood as a silent sentinel, its wax tears frozen in time. And there upon the desk lay a notebook, its pages whispering a tale of the past. Detective Morgan, a seeker of truths, delved into the notebook's cryptic words, each stroke of the pen a clue left behind by Elise Winters, a ghost of the past. Her meticulous handwriting danced across the pages, leading to a final entry etched with desperation. "I know he's watching me tonight," the ink pleaded, a plea lost in the shadows of the night. The room bore witness to Elise's last moments, frozen in time like a haunting echo of the past. The detective, a lone figure in the dim light, uncovered a web of deceit woven by powerful hands. Elise, a paralegal entangled in a web of corporate intrigue, had stumbled upon secrets that were never meant to see the light. As the investigation unfolded, the room yielded its secrets reluctantly, revealing only fragments of the truth. The scent of dust mingled with a faint chemical odor, a reminder of the darkness that lurked within the walls. The landlord's pallid face betrayed a fear long buried, a truth he dared not acknowledge. Elise's disappearance, shrouded in mystery, led the detective down a winding path of deception and betrayal. The room, a silent witness to her struggle, held the key to unlocking a sinister truth hidden in plain sight. The whispers of the past echoed through the empty halls, a haunting melody of justice denied. The discovery of hidden files, a flash drive, and a key unraveled a web of deceit that stretched far beyond the confines of the room. Dark revelations emerged, exposing a conspiracy that reached deep into the heart of power. The truth, a fragile thread, threatened to unravel a carefully crafted facade. As the investigation deepened, shadows danced on the walls, whispering secrets long forgotten. The detective, a lone figure in a sea of darkness, followed the trail of breadcrumbs left by Elise, a ghostly guide leading him toward the heart of darkness. The truth, a fragile beacon in the night, illuminated a path fraught with danger. The unraveling of the mystery led to a reckoning, a confrontation with the darkness that had long haunted the room. Vincent Harriman, a man of power and privilege, stood accused of a crime that had long been buried in shadows. The room, a silent witness to his deeds, bore testimony to the truth that could no longer be denied. In the hushed courtroom, a mother's voice rang out, a lament for a daughter lost to the darkness. The truth, a bitter pill to swallow, exposed the depths of depravity that lurked beneath the surface. Justice, a fleeting dream, became a reality as the guilty were brought to account. The house, a silent sentinel in the night, stood as a testament to the power of truth to prevail over darkness. The room, a shrine to a life lost too soon, whispered tales of justice served in the dead of night. And as the shadows lengthened, a light flickered in the upstairs window, a beacon of hope in a world consumed by shadows. Story 19. In the quiet stillness of a suburban neighborhood, a mysterious parcel arrived for Sarah Miller, wrapped in a plain envelope devoid of any return address. Inside, nestled among folds of paper, lay a single brass key, its surface weathered by the relentless passage of time. Sarah held the key in her palm, a sense of eerie familiarity washing over her, though she couldn't place where it might belong. With a curious urge, she ventured through her home, attempting the key in every lock she owned. But each one remained steadfast, unmoved by the foreign metal. Puzzled, she placed the key on her coffee table, its weight a silent presence in the room. And then, as if in response to this strange offering, the old grandfather clock standing in the hallway stirred to life with a single, hollow chime, a haunting echo of a time long past, despite its broken state. Perplexed by the inexplicable occurrence, Sarah sought the counsel of local authorities, sharing the tale of the enigmatic key that had crossed her threshold. Initially met with skepticism, the responding officer brushed off her concerns as a mere mix-up in the mail, a key sent in error, a trivial mistake. But Sarah's intuition whispered otherwise, a nagging sense that something was amiss, a shadow lurking just beyond the corner of her awareness. Reluctantly, the officer accepted the key as potential evidence, sealing it in a small evidence bag that would soon become a linchpin in a sprawling investigation that would unravel the tranquility of the neighborhood. Enter Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator from the Special Victims Unit, whose keen instincts honed over years of service signaled that this seemingly innocuous key held secrets far darker than its unassuming appearance suggested. The brass key sat on his desk, an enigma beckoning his attention, stirring a dormant unease within him. Delving into Sarah's background revealed a life lived in the shadows of normalcy, a retired high school English teacher, widowed, with grown children scattered across the country. No red flags in her financial records, no ominous traces in her digital footprint. She appeared on the surface to be the epitome of innocence, a bystander caught in the web of a mystery she never sought. Forensic examinations yielded scant evidence, with only Sarah's fingerprints adorning the key, the envelope offering no clues beyond a generic postmark from a distant distribution hub. The key itself, a common Schlage model, bore the scars of time, a relic of unknown origins. A breakthrough emerged when Detective Harmon decided to cross-reference the key's unique bidding pattern with the department's database, a shot in the dark that illuminated a chilling connection to a cold case from years past. An identical key pattern had once unlocked a storage unit, a chamber of horrors harboring blood-stained remnants, tools of violence, and haunting photographs of women whose faces remained nameless. The original investigation had stalled, leaving a trail of unanswered questions and unspeakable deeds shrouded in darkness. Harmon unearthed the dusty case files, traces of a past investigator's efforts etched in fading ink. The key had resurfaced, a spectral link to a past that refused to remain buried. As the investigation deepened, the lingering shadows coalesced into a grim portrait of horror and despair. Sarah, now enveloped in a pall of fear, fortified her home with new locks and a vigilant security system, a futile attempt to ward off the encroaching dread. The puzzle pieces began to align when a distant familial match emerged from the expanded DNA analysis, leading investigators down a twisted path to Harold Jenkins, a shadow from Sarah's past, a specter of malevolence lurking in the periphery of her life. Jenkins, a ghostly figure with a fragmented past, had once roamed the same streets as Sarah, his presence woven into the fabric of her existence without her knowledge. A substitute teacher with a patchwork employment history, a transient soul with untraceable footprints. The manhunt intensified, a race against time to apprehend a predator concealed beneath a veneer of normalcy. The cabin, a forgotten monument to Jenkins' depravity, revealed a chamber of horrors beneath its floorboards, a hidden room housing a macabre collection of keys, each one a grim testament to lives extinguished. The investigators, haunted by the scale of the atrocities uncovered, unearthed a chilling cache of human remains buried in the earth behind the cabin, a grim tableau of suffering and loss that defied comprehension. Sarah, thrust into the heart of a nightmare not of her making, found herself at the epicenter of a tragedy that transcended her understanding. The man known as the Keymaster had woven a web of darkness around her, a malevolent presence that sought to inscribe his legacy upon her life. The hunt for Jenkins culminated in a harrowing confrontation, a clash of wills that ended in tragedy as he chose to take his own life rather than face the reckoning for his crimes. His journal, a chronicle of horrors, spoke of twisted desires and unspeakable acts, a testament to the depths of human depravity. In the aftermath, as the community grappled with the revelation of evil lurking in their midst, Sarah found herself adrift, unable to return to the sanctuary of her home, now tainted by the specter of violence. The grandfather clock, once a harbinger of the uncanny, now stood silent and still. Its hidden purpose revealed a conduit through which Jenkins had watched and waited, a silent observer of his own malevolent design. And as the investigation closed its grim chapter, a collection of brass keys lay dormant in an evidence locker, mute witnesses to the horrors that had unfolded, a stark reminder of the darkness that can fester behind the facade of normalcy, waiting to be unlocked by a twisted mind. Story 20. The ancient box lay hidden beneath layers of forgotten belongings in the attic, a relic left behind by the house's previous inhabitants. Among the faded Polaroids it held, snapshots of ordinary moments like birthdays and family gatherings filled the old box. Yet one photograph stood out from the rest, shrouded in an eerie aura. In this photo, captured in her very own living room, sat a family she did not recognize. Their smiles frozen in time, they appeared blissfully unaware of the dark figure lurking in the shadows behind them, a silent observer in the hallway. Rebecca's hands trembled as she gazed at the unsettling image, a chill creeping up her spine. The resemblance between her home and the one in the photo was uncanny, the same furnishings, the same architecture. But these faces were strangers, their presence a haunting mystery. Descending the creaking wooden stairs, Rebecca carried the photograph to the stark light of the kitchen, where its secrets seemed to whisper in the stillness of the room. Entered Detective Morgan, clad in a worn leather jacket that spoke of countless investigations. With a keen gaze that missed no detail, he examined the photograph with a methodical air. Turning it over, he sought clues on the blank back, probing into the history of the house. "What do you know about the Nelsons who sold you this house?" His voice rumbled low, revealing nothing of his thoughts. Rebecca confessed her limited knowledge, having only dealt with a realtor during the purchase. Thus began a quiet inquiry as Detective Morgan delved into the past occupants of the house. Tracing back through time, he uncovered a peculiar pattern of families disappearing after precisely 1 year of residence. The latest enigma, the Sutherlands, had left no trace behind, no forwarding address, no signs of relocation. Their sudden vanishing act echoed those before them, creating a web of unanswered questions that led back to the very foundations of the house. Forensic analysis of the old photograph unveiled startling details, pointing to a hidden presence in the hallway. A tall, shadowy figure, its features obscured, observed the camera with a chilling stillness. As the investigation deepened, a name emerged from the shadows of the past: Samuel Whitfield, the elusive architect of the house who had met a mysterious end. His spectral presence seemed to linger within the walls, linked to the disappearances that haunted the property. Beneath the concrete of the basement, a macabre discovery awaited, revealing the fate of the missing families. Perfectly preserved, they lay in eternal repose, victims of a sinister force that had eluded detection for years. Among their possessions, a camera bore witness to their final moments, capturing smiles while shadows loomed unseen. The house, now a crime scene, harbored dark secrets that drove Rebecca into the protective custody of the authorities. A hidden chamber in the attic unveiled a chilling truth, a journal detailing Samuel Whitfield's sinister observations of the families who had inhabited the house. The final entry, a harbinger of dread, spoke of a new presence in the home, signaling a sinister turn of events. Fleeing to a refuge, Rebecca found herself haunted by an ominous phone call in the dead of night, a reminder that the specter of the past still lingered. The investigation remains unresolved, the house a silent sentinel of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. Samuel Whitfield's fate remains an enigma, his legacy casting a long shadow over those who dare to seek the truth. In the darkness, new photographs develop, capturing unsuspecting families in the grip of an unseen watcher. And as the search continues, those who delve into the secrets of the man in the photograph find themselves ensnared in a chilling game of shadows and whispers. Story 21. In the attic, hidden beneath a worn blanket, they stumbled upon it. A porcelain doll, fragile and ancient, with eyes of painted blue, wide and unwavering. Sarah and Michael, a young couple, had never laid eyes on it before. They dismissed it with a chuckle, just another overlooked relic. But that night, as they settled under the covers, a peculiar sensation lingered in the air. The stillness lingered, the atmosphere grew dense, and when morning arrived, the doll was no longer in the attic. It perched ominously at the foot of their bed. Sarah and Michael had been captivated by the Victorian house's intricate woodwork and enigmatic allure when they purchased it at auction, oblivious to the whispers of its tumultuous past. They were drawn to the stories woven into its walls, unaware that they would soon become entwined in its dark narrative. Detective Rachel Winters was summoned on a crisp autumn day to investigate. The female victim was found in the master bedroom, her body contorted into an unnatural pose, limbs bent at precise angles, eyes frozen wide in terror. The male victim, discovered in the hallway, seemed as though he had been attempting to flee. The crime scene was pristine, no forced entry, no signs of struggle apart from the haunting final moments. "The arrangement is intentional," Detective Winters murmured into her recorder as the crime scene was meticulously documented. The woman appears staged, like a doll plucked from a display case. The probe commenced with exhaustive interviews of neighbors. An elderly resident recalled glimpsing a shadow flitting behind an upstairs window when the couple should have been away. Another mentioned hearing childlike laughter emanating from the vacant house in the dead of night. Each anecdote added another layer of disquiet to the burgeoning case file. Forensic analysis unveiled microscopic fibers throughout the house, antique cotton and silk, akin to materials used in vintage doll clothing. The fibers were most concentrated around the victims' bodies in the attic. What was more disconcerting was what they did not find. No fingerprints besides the victims, no foreign DNA, no footprints where they shouldn't be. "It's as though the perpetrator was never physically present," remarked the lead analyst. The investigation delved into the property's history. Records unveiled a pattern: 3 prior owners had met mysterious ends over 6 decades. Each case remained unsolved, with peculiar anomalies noted. One family reported discovering antique toys in freshly cleaned rooms. Another recounted hearing phantom footsteps when the house should have been empty. A yellowed newspaper clipping from decades past caught Detective Winter's attention. A distinguished doll maker and his daughter had once resided in the house. The child's demise was shrouded in suspicion, and the father, though questioned, was never charged. Before taking his own life, he fashioned one final doll, a flawless replica of his daughter. The inventory list from Sarah and Michael's purchase made no mention of such a doll. As Detective Winters delved deeper, a sinister thread emerged connecting all the victims. Each had made alterations to the attic space. Sarah and Michael had begun renovations shortly before their demise, intending to transform the attic into a workspace. A breakthrough occurred when old photographs were unearthed from a concealed compartment beneath the attic floorboards. The images depicted the doll maker with his creations, one doll standing out identical to the one discovered by Sarah and Michael. The doll appeared to shift positions in the photos, almost as if it were moving between shots taken moments apart. Infrared scans revealed chilling evidence, minuscule handprints, invisible to the naked eye, trailing from the attic to the master bedroom, alongside a peculiar residue of porcelain dust mixed with unidentifiable organic matter. The investigation took a bizarre turn when Detective Winters interviewed a distant relative of the doll maker. The woman divulged family lore of the doll maker using unconventional materials and methods, allegedly infusing his most prized creations with human elements to imbue them with life. She spoke of rituals to bind spirits to objects, arcane knowledge acquired during the doll maker's travels. The most exquisite dolls, she whispered, were never intended as mere playthings. Following this revelation, the case hit a dead end. No suspects, no plausible explanations. The case lingered, growing cold. Detective Winters opted to retain the doll as evidence, securing it in a locked cabinet at the station. The next morning, officers found her office door ajar, the cabinet empty. The detective herself was discovered at her desk, bewildered but unharmed, with no recollection of the night before. Surveillance footage revealed naught but static during the mysterious hours. The house exchanged hands once more at auction, its tainted history casting a shadow on its value despite its architectural grandeur. The new owners uncovered the attic bare, save for a neatly folded blanket in the corner. The doll remained elusive, and the tragic fates of Sarah and Michael joined the roster of unsolved cases, spoken of in hushed tones within the precinct. Some claim to have glimpsed the doll in evidence storage, yet inventory audits contradicted its presence. Detective Winters retired prematurely, citing personal reasons. On her final day, she extracted a solitary item from her personal files, a photograph of the doll maker and his collection. She sealed it in an envelope marked "Never Open" and safeguarded it away. The new owners reported no disturbances, opting to leave the attic undisturbed. But on tranquil evenings, residents would report glimpsing a faint shadow behind the attic window and catching strains of childlike laughter on the breeze. Story 22. The worn envelope bore the marks of time, its once white paper now tinged with yellow, yet the stamp was fresh, a recent dispatch. With care, the detective unfolded it, revealing a single sheet of paper. The message, hastily typed, read, "I am sorry for what I did." A faint dampness clung to the paper, carrying with it a faint metallic scent. A reddish smear along the bottom edge caught their attention, distinct from the ink on the page. Detective Sarah Morgan, with practiced precision, secured the letter in an evidence bag, the touch of her gloved fingers deliberate. The forensics team confirmed her suspicions the stain was human blood, matching DNA from a cold case that had long shadowed the department. The victim, a young journalist named Rebecca Warren, met a tragic end in her own home, her body marked by multiple stab wounds. Her work scattered, her laptop missing, suggesting a link between her research and the attack. Despite tireless efforts, the case remained unsolved until this cryptic letter emerged, addressed simply to the Homicide Division. Few fingerprints graced the paper and envelope, only smudges hinting at gloved hands. The postmark, however, provided a glimmer of hope after months of stagnation. Gathering her team in the dimly lit briefing room, Morgan unveiled the letter at the heart of their investigation board. "This changes everything," she declared. "Our perpetrator shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner, examined the letter closely. "Or desires us to believe so," he countered. "The blood may be a calculated performance, a taunt." The trail of the typewriter led to a model long out of production, a relic from the past, uncommon yet not unattainable. The team broadened their search, reaching out to antique vendors across the region. Delving into Rebecca's life anew, they uncovered her relentless pursuit of truth, her latest expos delving into a wealthy family entangled in local politics. As suspicions swirled, they turned to Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, whose demeanor now betrayed a subtle unease, a shift from their initial meeting. Rebecca feared she was being followed, he confessed. "I dismissed it as paranoia fueled by her investigation. I should have heeded her warnings." Amid their inquiries, a second letter arrived, echoing the first in its cryptic contents. This time the narrative unraveled further. She delved too deeply into the family's secrets, the inheritance, the patriarch's demise. "I never intended for it to escalate." The path led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where they interviewed his eldest son, Richard. Among his possessions, a collection of vintage typewriters stood out. Questioned about them, his responses rang rehearsed, polished. Breakthrough arrived with microscopic fibers on the envelopes, a match to custom stationery exclusive to the family's youngest daughter, Eleanor. Unveiling Richard's clandestine room, they unearthed a trove of incriminating evidence articles about Rebecca, surveillance materials, and the vintage typewriter used for the letters, stained with her blood. Unexpectedly, the ties between Richard and Michael surfaced, financial transactions painting a damning picture. Michael's confession laid bare the truth, a scheme gone awry, a life lost. Eleanor's revelation, a pivotal recording, captured Richard and Michael conspiring against Rebecca. The damning words rang clear: she must disappear for good. In his flight from justice, Richard met his end, his denials futile against the mounting evidence. The trial unfolded, a tapestry of deceit and redemption, concluding with a swift verdict. As the courtroom emptied, Detective Morgan approached Rebecca's grieving parents, offering solace in the face of irrevocable loss. The blood-stained letters, relics of a misguided act, stood as testaments to the fragility of deception. The case of Rebecca Warren endured as a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most intricate schemes crumble beneath the weight of truth, that contrition, whether genuine or feigned, unravels the most meticulously laid plans. In the hush of night, where shadows dance and whispers fade, the story of Rebecca Warren lingers, a somber lullaby of justice served, of secrets unmasked. Story 23. The old apartment exuded a sense of history, its walls holding secrets whispered through the ages. The heating system groaned, the pipes rattled in a familiar symphony of age. It was just the building settling, or so they thought. But one night everything changed. A faint, eerie voice drifted through the vents, a mere whisper but distinctly calling out a name. She froze, heart racing, as she pressed her ear against the grate, feeling a chill brush her cheek. The voice, playful yet ominous, taunted, "I know you're listening." Detective Morgan Shaw entered the dimly lit, empty apartment, her presence a stark contrast to the silence that enveloped the space. Her sharp gaze fixated on the rusted vent cover, forcibly removed from its place. The forensic team moved around her, capturing every detail with flashes of light. The missing woman, Eleanor Reeves, had vanished without a trace until the building's unsettling odor led to the discovery. Officer Patel read from his notes about Eleanor's claims of hearing voices through the vents, dismissed by management as mere creaks of an old building. but Shaw, kneeling by the vent, noticed the deep scratches around it, evidence of a desperate struggle to escape from within. The air felt heavy with unsolved mysteries. Alina, a beloved kindergarten teacher, had shown signs of increasing paranoia before her disappearance. Her sister revealed how Alina believed someone watched and spoke to her through the vents, a notion initially brushed off as work-related stress. Shaw re-examined the apartment, noticing the meticulously made bed, the abandoned coffee mug, and a chair placed beneath the vent as if waiting for a clandestine conversation. Clues emerged from the forensic analysis, linking fibers in the vent to Alina's clothing and an unknown fingerprint inside the vent cover. But the most chilling discoveries were the recordings from Alina's phone, capturing her fearful exchanges with an unseen entity. Shaw listened in her car, rain providing a haunting backdrop to Alina's desperate pleas and the unsettling responses that followed. The building's dark past revealed a pattern of tenants fleeing, haunted by voices, hallucinations, and unexplained phenomena. Harold Weber, the enigmatic superintendent, raised suspicions with his nonchalant demeanor, yet his unease when questioned about the apartment's history hinted at buried secrets. A hidden passage in Alina's bathroom led to a maintenance crawl space, a clandestine realm where someone had lurked, observing, whispering. Shaw's team uncovered Weber's meticulously kept records, a chilling archive of his victims' lives, captured through vents and peepholes. His serene arrest belied the horrors hidden within his computer and a storage unit filled with mementos of past tenants. Weber's twisted obsession with merging with the building's essence unfolded through diary entries, painting a picture of a deluded predator seeking connection through terror. Alina's tragic fate revealed a calculated manipulation, luring her into the ventilation system under the influence of drugs, her life slipping away in the metallic maze. Families of previous victims emerged, sharing tales of paranoia, missing items, and the insidious whispers that plagued their loved ones. Weber's trial showcased a battle of sanity versus meticulous planning, culminating in a swift verdict of guilt. As he was escorted away, his parting words echoed a chilling truth. The building retained memories of his sinister presence, whispers lingering in the vacant halls. The once bustling apartment building now stands silent, a spectral reminder of its dark past. Despite attempts at renewal, residents still report ghostly murmurs in the vents, phantom drafts carrying echoes of lost souls. The building's groans and rattles continue, a haunting refrain that echoes through the night, a lullaby of secrets, a melody of the unknown. Story 24. The parcel arrived unannounced, a mystery wrapped in a cardboard box without a return label or tracking number. Its surface bore traces of the morning dew, hinting at a journey through the quiet hours before dawn. Sarah Miller, the unsuspecting recipient, hesitated as her gaze lingered on the unfamiliar name scrawled on the package, Daniel Whitaker. It wasn't meant for her, yet fate had placed it on her doorstep, tempting her with its enigmatic presence. The rational choice would have been to disregard it, to leave it untouched in the morning light. But the allure of the unknown beckoned to her curious soul, whispering secrets waiting to be unveiled. With a sense of trepidation mingled with intrigue, Sarah carefully peeled back the tape, expecting to find mundane contents within. However, what greeted her curious eyes was far from ordinary, a lone VHS tape nestled within the confines of the box, accompanied by a solitary sticky note bearing a cryptic message, "Watch alone." The weight of the black plastic cassette felt peculiar in Sarah's hands, as if it carried a burden beyond its physical form. Her fingertips traced the weathered edges of the tape, exploring the imperfections etched into its surface. The handwritten note, marked by the urgency of its creator, hinted at a tale waiting to be told, a narrative shrouded in shadows and mystery. As Sarah stood in her kitchen, the suburban world outside continued its rhythmic melody of everyday life, the distant bark of a dog, the laughter of playful children, the distant drone of a lawnmower. Oblivious to the clandestine delivery that had just crossed her threshold, the world carried on in its usual manner. Against her better judgment, Sarah succumbed to the pull of curiosity and inserted the tape into her aging VCR. Static crackled on the screen before gradually sharpening into focus, revealing a dimly lit room bathed in a soft glow. The camera angle hinted at haste, capturing the image of a man seated in a wooden chair, his features initially obscured by shadows. "My name is Daniel Whitaker," the man's voice resonated through the speakers, steady yet tinged with an underlying tension. "If you're watching this, someone has found you, and that means they will find me too." With each word, the man leaned forward, unveiling a countenance marked by weariness and a silent resolve. His confession unfolded, painting a picture of innocence marred by circumstances beyond his control. The room around him spoke of transience, of a life lived on the fringes, ever ready to flee at a moment's notice. "They framed me," Daniel's voice wavered slightly, betraying the weight of his words. "I didn't harm her, but they made it appear as though I did. My prints, my DNA, all fabricated to fit their narrative." As the tape continued, Detective Eliza Ramirez found herself drawn into a web of deception and intrigue. The appearance of multiple tapes, each bearing Daniel Whitaker's desperate plea, hinted at a truth obscured by layers of falsehood. The investigation into Catherine Walsh's murder took an unexpected turn as Ramirez delved deeper into the shadows cast by powerful forces. Whispers of a pharmaceutical company's dark secrets emerged, casting a sinister light on the events surrounding Catherine's untimely demise. Evidence of corporate malfeasance and a whistleblower silenced echoed through the corridors of power, exposing a truth that some were willing to kill to conceal. Sarah Miller's involvement in the unfolding drama deepened as a second package arrived at her doorstep, filled with damning documents that laid bare the conspiracy at play. Piece by piece, the puzzle began to take shape, leading Ramirez and Sarah on a trail of breadcrumbs left by a man wronged by fate. Within the confines of a storage unit, the final pieces of the puzzle awaited discovery: Daniel Whitaker's journal, Catherine's evidence, and the damning proof of a meticulously orchestrated frame-up. Justice, elusive yet relentless, found its way through the labyrinth of lies and deceit, bringing to light the machinations of those who sought to bury the truth. In the end, as Sarah and Daniel stood in quiet contemplation, they pondered the fragile line that separated truth from fiction, justice from manipulation. The wrong address had led to the unraveling of a sinister plot, a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected packages bear the greatest revelations, waiting for a curious soul to unveil their hidden truths. Story 25. The inn was modest, outdated, a place where guests passed through quickly, their stays fleeting. The receptionist handed her the key with a peculiar expression. "Just avoid the final door on the left," he whispered cryptically. Intrigue tugged at her, stirring curiosity within. That evening, as she wandered along the poorly illuminated corridor, she hesitated before the forbidden door. The brass handle chilled her hand. The door appeared unremarkable until she pressed her ear against it. A soft, rhythmic breath whispered from the other side. Detective Morgan Reed blinked away drowsiness, stepping beneath the yellow tape marking the crime scene entrance. The stench overwhelmed her senses, first metallic and acrid, a scent that spoke of tragedy. Bloodstains tainted the threadbare carpet, transforming its design into a shadowy hue. The room was a paradox: immaculate bathroom, undisturbed bed, and the gruesome sight in between. A young woman lay lifeless on the floor, her golden locks splayed like a halo. Her vacant gaze stared upwards, frozen in a semblance of shock or dread. Reed knelt beside the victim, mindful of the evidence markers dotting the scene. "Third one this season," remarked the forensic expert, his tone detached and clinical as he photographed the body from various angles. "Same modus operandi as the others." Reed nodded in silent acknowledgement. The victim wore upscale attire, out of place in this forsaken motel. A designer handbag lay open on the nightstand, contents undisturbed. This was no random act of theft. A different motive guided this killer's hand. The motel manager lingered anxiously at the doorway, his complexion drained of color. "She checked in alone, paid in cash. I never imagined," his voice faltered. "The maid discovered her during the cleaning." Reed scanned the room anew. No signs of forced entry, no defensive marks on the victim. She had either willingly admitted her assailant or recognized them beforehand. Back at the precinct, Reed pinned up photos on the incident board. 3 women bearing striking resemblances, each discovered in budget motels off the beaten path. Rumors of a serial predator began to circulate, piquing public interest. "The autopsy findings are in," informed Detective Hayes, dropping a file on Reed's desk. "Death by manual strangulation. No trace of DNA under her nails, no indications of sexual assault." Reed furrowed her brow. "This is personal, not merely predatory in nature." Days melded into one another as the investigation deepened. Surveillance footage from the hotel revealed no anomalies. The victim, identified as Elaine Werner, was a meticulous financial analyst with no known adversaries. Her acquaintances described her as cautious, detail-oriented, a person unlikely to choose such lodgings willingly. A breakthrough came during Reed's interview with Werner's sister. She mentioned a man she was involved with, the sister disclosed, her hands trembling around her coffee cup. "Someone from her workplace. She kept it a secret, said he was complicated, possibly married." Reed Langdon. "Did she provide a name?" "She referred to him as C. That's all she disclosed." The focus of the investigation shifted to Werner's workplace. Colleagues portrayed her as professional, private. None were aware of any romantic entanglements. Yet inside Werner's desk, Reed discovered a business card nestled within a desk calendar. Charles Emerson, Senior Vice President. Emerson exuded an air of concern and cooperation, when questioned distant yet helpful. His alibi seemed airtight, dining with his spouse and another couple. Nonetheless, something in his gaze unsettled Reed. "Did you socialize with Elaine Werner outside of work?" Reed inquired casually. A flicker of discomfort passed over Emerson's features, fleeting and subtle. "Only in a professional capacity." Later that week, forensics matched partial fingerprints from Werner's handbag to Emerson. Confronted with the evidence, his fa-de crumbled. "We were involved," he confessed, "but I terminated it. She threatened to expose me to my wife." "Sufficient reason to end her life?" Reed probed. Emerson's countenance hardened. "I never visited that motel." Yet records from the hotel painted a contradictory picture. A credit card transaction for the adjacent room paid with a corporate card linked to Emerson's firm. Upon searching that room, a concealed camera was discovered within the shared wall vent, the evidence against him mounted. Fibers from Emerson's distinctive suit matched those on Werner's body. His DNA was present on a water glass in her room. Examination of his home computer unveiled similar recordings of the 2 prior victims. A pattern emerged. Emerson targeted women resembling his wife in her youth. He lured them to designated motels, always selecting the room next to the last door on the left, a room prepped with surveillance gear. After capturing their encounters on film, he returned to erase the evidence, the women themselves. In the interrogation chamber, Emerson's composed fa-de finally shattered. They posed a threat to everything, he murmured. My reputation, my marriage, my existence. The trial proceeded swiftly but stirred great public interest. 3 families witnessed justice unfold in the sterile courtroom. Emerson displayed no remorse, maintaining the stoic demeanor that had served him well in the corporate world. The judge sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As officers escorted him away, Reed locked eyes with him. Fleetingly, she glimpsed something beyond his mask, not compassion, but its void, a hollow space where empathy should have resided. Dubbed the door on the left case by the media, psychologists delved into Emerson's psyche. True crime enthusiasts dissected every detail, yet for Reed the case remained unclosed. Occasionally, while traversing hotel corridors, she found herself tallying doors, pondering the enigmas hidden within. In the evidence vault secured from public view, 3 identical keys linger, labeled and archived. Tangible reminders that certain doors, once opened, can never be shut again. Story 26. The ancient library faced its fate of demolition, its walls holding secrets long forgotten. The workers toiled away, their efforts nearing completion when a twist of fate intervened. A laborer, sweat glistening on his brow, stumbled upon an inconspicuous latch hidden within a dusty bookshelf. With a hushed click, the shelf swung open, revealing a passage shrouded in darkness, beckoning with a silent promise of mystery. The room beyond was cloaked in a heavy stillness, untouched by time for what felt like an eternity. No furniture adorned the space save for a solitary chair, its iron frame bolted firmly to the floor. Etched repeatedly on the walls, a haunting message echoed through the silence, I am still here. The foreman, sensing an unsettling presence, swiftly reached for his radio, summoning the authorities to the scene. What began as a routine demolition swiftly spiraled into a labyrinth of enigma and dread. Detective Morgan Walsh, a seasoned investigator with 2 decades of experience, entered the hidden room with a sense of foreboding. His flashlight sliced through the darkness, revealing the chilling message scrawled across the walls. Secure the area, Walsh commanded, his voice resonating in the confined space. No one disturbs a thing until forensics arrives. The history of the library whispered tales of the Harrington family, a name synonymous with prestige and enigma in the town. The family had gifted the library to the public following the mysterious disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca. She had vanished without a trace, leaving behind unanswered questions and a void that lingered in the hearts of her loved ones. As the forensic team meticulously combed through the hidden chamber, they unearthed strands of hair and fibers embedded in the chair, remnants of a struggle long past. Traces of blood and skin cells clung to the scratches on the walls, hinting at a tumultuous turmoil that had unfolded within those walls. Walsh delved into the depths of the Harrington family saga, a tale woven with threads of betrayal and deceit. The timing of the library's donation after Rebecca's vanishing raised suspicions, casting a shadow of doubt over the once respected family. Further revelations surfaced as the investigation progressed. The contractor responsible for the hidden room's construction had close ties to Maxwell Harrington, Rebecca's uncle and the family patriarch. Payments exceeding normal renovation costs hinted at a darker narrative lurking beneath the surface. Former library staff shared fragments of memories, recalling Maxwell's peculiar insistence on preserving the untouched section of the building. An elderly librarian's recollection hinted at Maxwell's clandestine visits to the hidden room, shrouded in secrecy and obsession. The chilling truth unfurled as forensic analysis confirmed the DNA match between Rebecca and the hidden room's biological remnants. The walls of deception crumbled, revealing a sinister plot that had entwined the family in a web of lies and tragedy. A search of Maxwell's estate unearthed a damning journal, its pages stained with the depths of his obsession with Rebecca. The final entry laid bare the horrific reality, a desperate attempt to silence a threat, ending in a heinous act of violence. Confronted with irrefutable evidence, Maxwell's stoic facade shattered, revealing a man consumed by fear and guilt. The truth spilled forth in a confession tainted with regret and remorse, painting a portrait of a life consumed by darkness. Beneath the floorboards of the hidden room lay the remains of a life extinguished too soon. Rebecca's skeletal form, adorned with a silver bracelet, bore witness to the tragedy that had unfolded in the shadows. The courtroom echoed with the weight of justice as Maxwell faced his reckoning, his fate sealed by the echoes of a past long buried. The Harrington family, shadows of their former selves, found closure in the solemn act of laying their daughter to rest. The library, once slated for destruction, stood as a monument to a life lost and a truth revealed. Flowers adorned its entrance, a silent tribute to a soul that had whispered from beyond the veil, ensuring that justice would prevail, no matter how long the wait. Story 27, The Mystery of the Doppelganger. She cleared the mist from the mirror, gazing at her reflection. Everything appeared normal, her features in place, her attire unchanged. Yet a sense of unease crept over her as she continued to stare. A fleeting movement caught in the corner of her eye, a flicker not of her own making, and when she turned away, her reflection remained motionless, observing her every move. This peculiar incident marked the beginning of Rebecca Thorne's unsettling journey. What unfolded would baffle investigators and linger in the minds of a community for years to come. Rebecca resided alone in a modest apartment nestled in a serene suburban enclave. Known to be meticulous and reserved, she led a solitary existence, though she maintained polite interactions with her neighbors. Her occupation as a data analyst at a mid-sized firm filled her days with a rigid routine and unwavering precision. No one could have predicted that she would soon find herself at the heart of a perplexing criminal enigma. The initial disturbances seemed insignificant. Objects within Rebecca's home were subtly rearranged. A coffee mug shifted to a different shelf, books reordered, her toothbrush misplaced. She brushed off these anomalies as mere lapses of memory, attributing them to long hours spent engrossed in work under harsh fluorescent lights, straining her eyes on endless spreadsheets. Detective Marion Shaw first learned of Rebecca's plight after she finally reached out to the authorities following weeks of unsettling occurrences. At first glance, there seemed to be no criminal activity involved, prompting initial thoughts of directing her towards mental health services rather than law enforcement. Shaw noted the complaint but placed it among the pile of less urgent cases, deeming it devoid of tangible evidence. There were no signs of forced entry, no missing belongings, just a woman sensing a disturbance in her own abode, Shaw later recounted. It was the incident with the bathroom mirror that altered the course of events. During her second interaction with the police, Rebecca described in vivid detail how her reflection appeared to move independently, casting an eerie sensation of being watched even in solitude. This time, she possessed proof in the form of a security camera she had installed, aimed at her front entrance. The footage uncovered a chilling revelation that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned officers. The grainy visuals depicted Rebecca departing for work in the morning, only to have an identical figure, bearing her likeness, enter the apartment using a key 20 minutes later. Forensic experts meticulously scrutinized the footage for any signs of manipulation or tampering, but found none. The individual captured on camera mirrored Rebecca's movements, attire, and even carried her distinct leather bag. However, Rebecca's workplace security system's time-stamped records showed her already present at her office across town. "We are facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw informed her superiors. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can replicate her with uncanny accuracy." The investigation intensified as fingerprints throughout the apartment matched solely with Rebecca's, devoid of any foreign DNA traces. Neighbors attested to witnessing nothing out of the ordinary, merely Rebecca coming and going as she always had. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, recalled greeting Rebecca upon her return one evening, receiving no response, a behavior that struck her as unusual but not alarming. Rebecca commenced documenting the peculiar incidents in a journal. Minor alterations within her living space escalated vanishing food from her refrigerator, unexplained searches on her computer, and the discovery of unfamiliar selfies on her phone. In some images, her countenance appeared slightly askew, the smile overly wide, the eyes excessively intense. "I feel as though I'm losing my sanity," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. Or perhaps someone is orchestrating this illusion. A breakthrough emerged when investigators discerned a pattern within the security footage. The doppelganger only made appearances during Rebecca's scheduled departures for specific engagements, therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday grocery trips, pre-planned activities with predictable durations. "An individual well-versed in your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't happenstance, it's a calculated form of surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist posited that they were possibly dealing with a fixation case, an individual fixated on assuming Rebecca's identity, living her life, perhaps ultimately aiming to supplant her entirely. Such occurrences, though rare, had been documented in the annals of psychological literature. The perpetrator often experienced a psychological rupture, fixating on a victim who epitomized traits they coveted: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The scope of the inquiry narrowed when Rebecca mentioned a former co-worker, Lily Winters, who had been terminated due to escalating erratic conduct. Lily had closely collaborated with Rebecca, often remarking on their shared similarities. Following her dismissal, she sent Rebecca a series of disconcerting emails, one of which read, "We could be interchangeable. At times, I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's residence. What they unearthed transformed the case from disturbing to harrowing. A chamber within Lily's abode had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. The walls were plastered with photographs, countless snapshots of Rebecca entering her domicile, shopping, meeting acquaintances, all captured without her knowledge. A wardrobe in the closet housed exact replicas of Rebecca's attire. Rebecca's favored makeup brands adorned a vanity, alongside meticulous notes detailing her mannerisms, speech patterns, and daily routines. Particularly unsettling were the practice videos. Lily had documented herself emulating Rebecca's gait, gestures, and expressions, showcasing an evolution from clumsy imitations to near-perfect replicas of the real Rebecca. "She aspired to be me," Rebecca murmured upon viewing the evidence. "She wasn't merely mimicking me, she was erasing me." Forensic specialists uncovered sophisticated equipment for replicating keys and cloning electronic access cards. Lily had devised an intricate system to monitor Rebecca's movements, including a calendar brimming with precise predictions of her agenda. Nonetheless, Lily's ultimate objective remained elusive. Journals discovered in Lily's dwelling contained rambling entries that vacillated between first and third person, occasionally referring to Rebecca alternatively as me and her within the same paragraph. The final entry sent shivers down investigators' spines. Soon, only one of us shall endure. The stronger entity shall prevail. Upon authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished without a trace. Her residence bore signs of a hurried departure, drawers left ajar, certain gadgets missing. A nationwide alert was issued. Rebecca was ushered into protective custody, relocated to a secure site under constant surveillance. For 3 weeks, every locale linked to her previous life underwent vigilant monitoring. Lily remained conspicuous by her absence. The case took a disquieting turn when a security guard at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Rebecca had been sighted entering the premises despite being on leave. Surveillance footage confirmed the occurrence. An individual identical to Rebecca had accessed the building using a valid ID card, proceeded to her former workstation, and spent 40 minutes perusing her files before departing. Meanwhile, the real Rebecca remained sequestered in a guarded safe house, unable to have been present at the office. The implications crystallized. Lily hadn't fled, she had made her move. Assuming Rebecca's identity, she seamlessly slipped into her existence while the genuine Rebecca remained concealed. The case remains unsolved to this day. Lily Winters remains at large, evading capture. Rebecca Thorne opted not to return to her past life, forging a new identity at an undisclosed hideaway. Detective Shaw preserves a photograph on her desk, two eerily similar women. One is Rebecca Thorne, the other Lily Winters. She often scrutinizes their visages, seeking disparities, the subtle nuances that set one apart from the other. The most chilling aspect, Shaw imparts to new recruits, is not the possibility of someone resembling you or echoing your voice. It's the desire to assume your identity so fervently that they obliterate themselves in the process. Identity is not merely what we present to the world, it is what we safeguard with utmost vigilance. And sometimes its true value is only realized when someone endeavors to seize it.